good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. And welcome back to round 4 of the UKDMEL season here tonight at Fuji for round 4 of the season. My name is Max Ring. I'll be taking you through all of tonight's action alongside Nathan Richards. How are you, Nathan, on what should be a very exciting evening in front of us?
Certainly, I'm great, Max. Thank you for asking. Of course, I've seen a lot of these drivers before over in some of the R-Racing and ACC leagues, so I'm very excited to see what they can do tonight. I'm just watching on my end David Wrench, who, of course, so far in this championship has been rather dominant, has won every race and leads the standings by 24 points. To make that even more crazy, he's 50 points ahead of third.
Yeah, he's had a very, very dominant season indeed as we stay with the BMW driver as he's about to start one of his first qualifying laps. Of course, if you're new here, it's a 15 minutes qualifying session, should I say, with everybody on the circuit together, followed by a 90-minute race, and everybody is in LMGT3 machines. They're all in the LMGT3 car, so there's no multi-class splits. It is racing throughout, all for own personal glory. But as Wrench makes his way down into turn 1, now let's quickly run you through the rest of the standings. Of course, he does lead the way from Joseph Judson, who is in second, and it's David Brown third, Robert Jennings, Tim Bob Glimbury, Tom Stevens, Brad Jones, Alexandra Bryancroft, Peter Davidson rounds out the top 10. It's Carl Fenton, Mark Gladwell, Warren Joubert, Edward Jones, Oliver Parker, George Leslie, Robert Pryor, Tom Goad, Craig Lower, George Powsland, Joshua Lindsay, rounds out your point scorers. 22 drivers have scored points this evening. But Nathan, of course, Fuji as a circuit is a historic one in Japanese motorsport and also has hosted F1 races and World Endurance Championship events, of course. Just how difficult is this of a circuit to master?
I mean, I think it's one of the most difficult tracks on LMU, and I think it's probably one of the most difficult tracks in the world to master. Of course, to drive, it's not too bad, but to be good, it takes another skill level of driver, because the first sector's not too bad. Of course, you've got a really long run, one of the longest runs in the world, down to the first hairpin, which, once you've done it a few times, it's quite easy to know exactly where to brake. Then again, through down the hills and in the long right-hander, that's quite simple. But it's that final sector from turns 10 through to 16 where it's a real difficult, way to pace yourself through. Of course, it's very easy to lose the rear on the brakes. It's very easy to lose it on the traction. And also, depending on the car, very easy to go wide and get some understeer.
It certainly is indeed. And I mean, that final sector is probably one of the hardest in motorsport. Just the way you've got to throw the car in, it's off camber and it's just constantly trying to understeer out, and you're trying to rotate round on you as well as you pick up the power, and it is such a tricky circuit. It's got a bit of everything. You've got high speed corners, you've got low speed corners, and just as a whole, it is going to be one where it's difficult to find your braking points and difficult to manage the tyres as well over a 90-minute race distance. But Wrench has set the benchmark of 41.7 so far from the BMW, closely followed by fellow BMW driver Brad Jones. It's a BMW 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment. But Joe Juddy in the Mustang currently has a purple middle sector as he now makes his way to the start-finish line. So what can he do? Second fastest for the Mustang, and only just with 600ths separating that top 2 after the first lap.
Indeed, and 1-2 in the standings, sits 1-2 here in qualifying, and they're all 7/10 quicker than everybody else in the field. The two Joneses sit 3rd and 4th. In the BMWs. I'd imagine it's quite a good track around here. I know that with recent updates and meta changes that the BMW is one of the better cars, and given that this grid has got a big difference in skill level, of course you've got some very quick drivers, but you've got some of those that might be a little bit more new to the game and might not be at that top pace. The good thing about the BMW as Wrench goes quicker is that it's a good baseline for everybody. Doesn't matter how good you are, the BMW will always treat you well.
Yeah, it certainly will indeed. It's Very much a car that is well balanced. It of course is naturally a front-engined car, so it's a bit more understeer than oversteer. So if you're a little bit hesitant getting onto the throttle, it's not going to be too much of your worries because it's got a lot of straight line speed as well. Not very aerodynamic, quite a boxy shape. Still does work quite nicely. Ollie Parker has just moved himself up into 10th. That's dropped down to 11th as Tom Stevens goes to 7th fastest. Joe Juddy once again purple in the middle sector as Wrench is improving on his lap. But of course, in sessions like this, it's constant lap after lap after lap. You're fueled up for the whole session. You're constantly burning fuel. Your tyres are getting warmer and you're finding more and more grip as the session ticks by. So the laps we see now, we could be, come the end of this session here, Nathan, 4-5 tenths quicker come the very end of the session, just due to the car being naturally lighter and finding a bit more grip on those warmer tyres.
Certainly, and I think another thing as well is that drivers are going to be getting a little bit more... what's the word? More confident as laps go on. You know, some corners they might be a little bit more conservative on the braking. They might not get on the throttle too early. Whereas coming to the end of the session and as it goes on, they build up that confidence, they build up that momentum, and that just allows them to go that little bit quicker and not be afraid to go, you know, too fast into some corners and to, you know, carry as much speed through as possible. As we do see there, Judson improving, only half a tenth away from David Wrench, and they're now both 9 tenths away from third and below. So once again, it's a dominant performance here, and we're only in qualifying, 7 minutes to go. And as it goes at the moment, I'd imagine that nobody's going to get close to those two. You know, they might fight for pole, but I don't think there'll be much of a fight further back, as we do see Davidson there jump up into third place, and he is about half a second off, so not too bad from him there, just shy of 5 tenths away. And then Ollie Parker jumps up to the top 6 in the Porsche, and that shows us that we have, what, 5 different cars in the top 6. We have a BMW, a Ford, a Lexus, a Ferrari, Porsche, and then top 7 we have a Mercedes now.
Yeah, we certainly do. So it shows that there is quite an array of cars. The only manufacturer that's repeating itself here, of course, in that top 7 is the BMW. And then just behind that top 7, we have Brad Jones, Bomber, and Stevens, all also running that BMW. It does go well around this Fuji circuit, does the BMW. Joe Juddy improves in his final sector, but not overall on his lap time. He stays as he is. And we're now entering the, well, final few minutes of this session. The tyres will certainly have taken a beating. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these drivers have just backed off over these previous few laps just to cool those tyres back down and stop them from overheating, get them back into that optimum temperature. And that's certainly what David Wrench has done. 2 purple sectors in Sector 1 and Sector 2 across the line, does find an improvement and puts 4 tenths on Joe Juddy's head. So needing to respond is the Ford. What's happened there, Nathan?
Through, I think that's the exit of turn 4. He's gone a little bit wide, gone off the track. Luckily, you know, no spin or no damage, but he's gone wide and has had to collect the car, which is not ideal for Joe Juddy, who I think was originally finding time on his lap, but of course didn't even get to the end of the first sector. He's 4 tenths away now from Wrench at the front, but yeah, difficult times for him on track, and you can just see there, I think he's weaving, getting the tyres back to their optimum point so he can go again and try and set some quicker lap times. And we do see Tom Stevens jump up to 5th place, just over a second away in his BMW, so not doing too bad of a job at the moment. And also Robert Jennings in the Ferrari up into the top 4, also just over a second away. But at the moment, I think Davidson is doing a great job in 3rd place. Of course, back in round 2 at Monza, he did finish 3rd. Since then, he hasn't been on the podium. So, big opportunity for Davidson to jump up into the top 3 again.
Certainly is indeed, and lining up 3rd will exactly help his cause there. Robert Jennings was up in the first sector, down in the middle. Anything to find for the Ferrari through the final part of the lap. A little twitch through the penultimate corner. And as he now heads up into that final right-hander, a clumsy blind apex to then put the power down. It's so difficult to guess when to put the foot down there because, of course, you're just constantly running out wide. And up to the line he shall go. So for Jennings, it's a green first. yellow middle, not improving in the middle sector. Through the final sector is their improvement. No, there is not. David Wrench has come back to the pit lane, so he is obviously fueling up for one last attempt, maybe just swapping the tyres to get onto a fresh set. And Joe Juddy in the first sector is up by a 10th. Can he get closer and maybe topple Wrench's lap time? We'll need to find 4/10 of a second if he wants to snatch pole away.
It's going to be difficult, but it's not impossible at all for Juddy here. He's had a very good first set to middle sector. We'll see what he can manage to do as he heads himself onto the brakes and into a tricky part of the circuit, as we do see David Wrench back out onto track. So he'll go once again. And there we can see Juddy up by a 10.5 in the middle. So this is looking very good for Joe Juddy. He's up by 0.2 of a second at the moment, as Fenton has had a mistake somewhere, but that yellow flag has gone, so he's managed to recoup himself. But let's see what Juddy can do now as he makes his way through into the final few corners on this circuit. It's a long run up to the line, and we'll see what he can manage to do. He's weaving, though, as he heads his way down, so maybe he's not too happy with something, or maybe let his wheel go at the last second as he heads up to the line. What would it be for him? It is an improvement, and it's a 41.285, and he does go purple in the final sector, but we did see that happen on his last lap as well. He's very strong in the final part of the lap.
Yeah, that Mustang seems to really hook up that final sector rather nicely, and he's aborted this one, and I think that could well and truly be session over unless he can get back out the pit lane and get those tyres up to speed very, very quickly. I think that might be it there for Joe Juddy as Wrench is on an outlap. See what he can do a little bit later on. No one really looking like they're improving at the moment. Quickly going to go on board with Brad Jones, who currently will line up 10th place on the grid. But as we now make our way through the end of the first sector, he's up by half a 10th in the first part of the lap. So at the moment, this will just keep him behind Glenn Burry as Ollie Parker goes to 6th fastest. He puts that Porsche back up into the top 6. See now heading down into a very, very clumsy chicane. This one, it'll be late on the brakes, down the gears, try get it into that first apex and instantly switching it back over to the left-hand side before running the car all the way over to the exit curb. And then into the tricky final sector. More clumsy corners coming up. It's so difficult. They take forever to get through. It just feels like you are turning for an eternity. As that's a spin in the background there for Glenn Burry, who has gone all the way off the road in dramatic style. And that shows there, Nathan, that if you overheat those tyres slightly, this track will certainly bite.
Certainly. And I think the issue is sometimes when you lose grip in these cars, and once the car goes, it's so difficult to save it, and it'll just slide. And that's really not helped Berry here. Of course, he's starting his lap now, but of course he's got very hot tyres. He had poor momentum heading out to the final corner. This is going to give him a very bad run down to turn 1. Of course, he will start this lap, and he will be able to finish it, but he will probably lose time in that first sector, because of course he'll be trying to cool those tyres down as this lap begins. He's 1.4 seconds off at the moment from that pole position time of 1:40.977. Of course, Wrench, the only driver into the 1:40s, just shows how high of a level he is at here, as we do see Bomber Brown going to 10th place, just about pips into the top 10. He goes ahead of Brad Jones, who is up as well in the first sector, and Ollie Parker goes 4th.
That's a lovely lap time there from Ollie Parker to go into 4th place. Found a lot of time on that final lap in the Porsche, and we'll have time to go for one more, just like David Wrench as well. But back on board with Brad Jones as he now makes his way through the chicane. A big slide there in the middle of it, and that's going to cost him time in that middle sector, you would think. And I think he might have actually invalidated the lap there, because there is no middle sector coming through on our timing tower. So he has unfortunately invalidated the lap, and we'll have to just see this session out as David Wrench in the first sector has gone purple. He's gone fastest through the first part of the lap, 19 thousandths up on his previous best, and this will surely be a statement lap here to the rest of the field here, Nathan. He's got no threat for pole, but he might as well just flex his muscle slightly.
Indeed, I mean, it shows how good he is when he's barely improving and it's going purple. You know, it just shows he's near that maximum level and he's just pushing a little bit more out of the car, lap by lap. But unfortunately, he's down by over 2.5 tenths in the middle sector. So this will not be an improvement, I'd imagine, for David Wrench, unless he's somehow got over 3 tenths in the final sector. But I'd imagine that's quite highly doubtful for him, as he had a very quick final sector on his best lap. But of course, has got a very comfortable gap to second place and nearly a second back to third. So you'd imagine here for Wrench, it's in the race, getting down to turn 1 and then just getting into that rhythm and just being consistent. There's no point pushing and being super critical and clinical on his laps. He might as well just go for it and then, you know, given his 8 tenths a lap quicker, give it 3-4 laps and he's going to be clear of everybody, I'd imagine.
Yeah, certainly would be, I think, for David Wrench. He's absolutely spectacular at the moment, especially in this session. Cole Fenton moved his way up into the top 10 and up into 9th. Edward Jones is now coming up to the line. An improvement in the middle. Lost time in the first sector, though, and lost time in the final as well. So no improvement there from the BMW, and that is going to be your qualifying session over and done with. Everybody has finished their laps, and it will be David Wrench on pole position here this evening. A great lap from the BMW man, and your qualifying order is as follows. It's Wrench from Juddy, and then it's Davidson who rounds up the top 3. Parker, Stevens, Jennings, Tim Bob, then it's Jubei, Fenton, Burry, who rounds out the top 10. And we on to, of course, the rest of the field. Bomber Brown in 11th, Brad Jones, George Powsland, Edward Jones, Craig Lure, Tom Goad, George, Mark Gladwell, Robert Pryor and Alex round out the top 20. The rest of the field is people who, of course, didn't set any lap times there. It's Full Damage Queen, Josh Lindsay, Ollie Bradley, Ben Cullen, Ethan Lee, Dave Jones, James Rothwell and Diamond rounding out the field. But as we get ready for the race here, Nathan, I mean, for David Wrench, qualifying pace is one thing, race pace is another.
Certainly, but given he's won the first 3 races, I don't have any doubt in him at all. And when I've seen him race before, Wrench, he's very quick and barely makes mistakes. So I'd imagine it's an easy drive here for David Wrench, as it has been all season long so far, as we shouldn't be too far away from getting started for this 1 hour and 30-minute race. You'd imagine, really, Max, there'll be at least a pit stop for some drivers, maybe going for that 2-stopper to try something a bit different.
Yeah, 2-stopper might be on the cards, maybe doing 2 very low fuel stints to then get to the end, but I'm expecting the 1-stop to be the real one here. I'm not expecting drivers needing to change their tyres, but definitely, of course, put a fresh load of fuel into the car. We'll see what strategies we do have on offer tonight. Do you go early? Do you try and extend the first stint for as long as possible and then attack that second stint? Of course, you lose a lot of time in the pit lane. Even with just refueling, it can, if you go long and leave yourself a little bit more time in hand, of course, by having to, meaning you fuel up a little bit less, you have a little less time in the pit lane refueling, you could make the jump. Or if you do, as I mentioned, the 2 short bursts, you could find yourself still promoting yourself up places because the net loss is still that little bit better. So it's going to be interesting to see, and it's just also going to be interesting to see as well, Nathan, the battles that these drivers can have, and if some drivers are maybe out of place because they've made mistakes, how well they can come up through the field.
Certainly, I think one driver that needs to try and do something is Joe Juddy. On that first lap, if he can try and, you know, send a lunge into turn 1 or even just scare David Wrench, that's his only chance really of probably getting a move for first. I don't think he's got any chance otherwise. So for Juddy, just send it, see what you can do. You know, go a little bit ballsy into turn 1. Everybody else, though, the gaps in quali were very small. I mean, it was like a second separating like 8 or 9 drivers. All of those guys are going to be very similar pace. Now, there might be a lot of battling in race, but I think the main place where we're going to see the battlings, you know, as you could say, is going to be when they pit and go for the pit stops.
Yeah, I think that certainly is where we're going to see the battles really commence. But we are now heading to the green flag, and it's David Wrench and Joe Juddy who will lead us to the green. Go racing here for, of course, what will be the 4th round of the season. It going, of course, it is David Wrench on pole from Joe Juddy. Davidson in the other BMW in 3rd will also want to get a lightning launch and move himself into at least the top 2. And we go racing here in Fuji. It's a great start from the Mustang, which draws alongside with David Wrench as we make our way down into that first corner. It's an agonizingly long run if you are the attacking car into that first turn. It's going to be late on the brakes from the pair of them. Of course, cold brakes, cold tyres. We could see some chaos in the mid-pack, but it is Wrench who just holds on against Juddy, who tries to get the up and under, but he can't seem to fight his way through just yet. Tucked into the slipstream. Will look to the inside now into the next left-hander, but is just not able to see himself through, and David Wrench holds on to that race lead for now. Is a little bit further back. George is going side by side with Kyle. Bomber Brown is going side by side with Glenn Burry over that 10th place spot, but it is of course Nathan. A dream getaway there for David Wrench, exactly what he needed to do, and he takes the race lead and holds on to that pole position.
Certainly a bit of a threat there from Juddy, but however late Juddy broke, Wrench just broke later, and it worked every time. Then to turn 1 and then into turn 3. Some great work there by Wrench to hold on to that lead, and you'd imagine start to pull away as Brad Jones is going for some moves further back. Somebody's gone off. I think that is Bomber Brown in the BMW, has gone off the track, and I think has also been caught up with Brad Jones. So I'd imagine those who maybe made a bit of contact, they've both gone off. They'll rejoin at the back of the pack, as I've noticed there's over 10 drivers in the pit lane, so I'd imagine that they're not taking part here.
Yeah, I would imagine so as well, but that contact was between Bomber Brown and Brad Jones. We'll quickly go and have a look at it. Just seems like, of course, Brad Jones was just maybe on the grass under braking, and that, unfortunately for him, saw himself going straight into the back there of Jones, of Bomber Brown, and unfortunately that caused a big accident as Wrench is half a second clear of Juddy at the moment. But the big fact here as well, though, Nathan, is the fact that Juddy is faster through that final sector. So even though David Wrench might extend that gap through the first and second sector, we may see in that final part of the lap, Juddy just reel him back in and maybe get within striking distance as Bomber Brown actually gets a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, not sure what's happened there to Bomber Brown, but he's obviously done something he shouldn't have done, which is it's going to cause him to drop to the back quite comfortably, unfortunately, and then it's just a game of just trying to eliminate any more time loss, which is not ideal at all for Bomber Brown, who had a decent start, made a couple of positions on the opening lap, but now he's going to fall all the way to the bottom of the field, as we do see Wrench with a 9/10 gap. And as you said earlier, yes, there's probably a chance that we could see Juddy try and just stay with him in that final sector, and I think Juddy knows he's not a quicker driver. Wrench knows he's faster, for sure. So I think it's more the fact of Juddy staying within striking distance. So if Wrench makes a mistake, he's not going to get away unscathed. Oh, I thought he made a mistake. Never mind. There was a bit of lag in my hands and he shot him off the track.
Oh, unfortunate there for Juddy, and also unfortunate for Glenn Burry, who's off into the wall. A mistake that he made in qualifying, and this time it's had worse consequences because he's missing his rear wing. He's not got any rear wing on that Mercedes, and that is pretty much race run. Of course, no safety cars in LMU, so that means he's going to come into the pit lane, have to repair that damage, and will need an absolute miracle if he wants to break his way back in to at least the top 10. But that's going to be a hefty repair job there for the Mercedes crew. And Juddy is now 1.2 seconds behind as Wrench sets a new fastest lap of this race. And he is just building that gap further and further ahead. Ollie Parker, of course, in third. He's got Tom Stevens all over the back of him, so he's still got a battle for the final podium spot in this race. But of course, an hour and a half of racing, anything can happen. Plenty of mistakes can be made. You never know, one lapse in judgment, maybe even just lapping one of these other LMGT3 cars could result in a monumental collision, which of course we don't want to see, but could take out a contender for the race lead. But for Stevens, he's putting the pressure onto Ollie Parker. This is the closest battle we have on the circuit. He's even got Peter Davidson for company as well.
Certainly. There's another little battle further behind, which I've been keeping an eye on these last few minutes, and it's going to be Edward Jones and Kyle Fenton fighting for 9th, and it's been a brilliant battle. They've both been swapping positions, and at the moment Edward Jones has that 9th place, but as they've been battling, surprisingly they've actually gained in on George Pousland, so we'll see what they can do there and maybe turn that into a 3-way fight. Of course, they've also got Goad not that far away. He's around a second off, so any mistakes happen or any bits of contact, he's going to be there to capitalise. And I suppose that's, you know, the very same as what we got further ahead, as David Wrench goes fastest once again, and he was 0.6 quicker than Juddy on the last lap and over a second quicker than everybody else, and he is just flying at the moment. Has a 4.5 second gap over Ollie Parker after just a couple of minutes, as that's Davidson making the move.
Yep, Davidson trying to go around the outside of Stevens. Well defended by the sister BMW car as they now head down into turn 3. The Porsche of Ollie Parker, thanks to this battling, has just been able to break a second clear from Stevens, but he's able to live another day in that 4th place for now. Not really expecting, unless Davidson gets a monumental run out of this right-hander, to go for a lunge onto Stevens. And no, just has to sit behind. He's also got Tim Bob just behind him, of course, in the Lexus. And that Lexus can be quite a handy car as well around this circuit. Of course, it's going to be a home race for that Lexus car. It'll be interesting to see how Tim Bob gets on a little bit further back. Tom Goad is giving Bomber Brown a run for his money over that 12th place spot, who himself looking for a move onto Craig in front of him. To the inside goes Bomber Brown. The number 4 machine just forces the 113 offline, and it is going to be Bomber Brown moving himself up into 11th place. A lovely move late on the brakes, and that's exactly how you recover your car up through the field after a collision that wasn't your fault.
Yeah, certainly good work. He was down to 15th, I think it was, after lap 1, and now back up only 2 seconds away from the top 10. So some brilliant work here by Bomber Brown to put his head down and start putting some decent lap times in. As we do see there, Joe Juddy only go a 10th slower than David Wrench, and was actually purple in the middle sector. So he's got a lot of pace there. He just can't do anything to stick with Wrench, who's still flying away out in front as everybody crosses the line to begin another lap here of racing at Fuji. And of course, quite in terms of the pit stops, I'd imagine you're looking at 1 stop here, so probably in around maybe half an hour, a little bit later. Some drivers might go for 2 stops. It just depends on what sort of strategy they want to take. And also, another key thing is tyres. How many tyres do people change? Do they bother changing them, or do they want to go for all full? Have to wait and see on that one, because that's also quite a telling factor in many of the strategies on LMU.
It certainly is indeed, as we're going for somewhat of a lap here with Tom Stevens. He's trying to hunt down in front of him Ollie Parker as he now makes his way into the chicane. You can see him dropping it all the way down to first gear to try and get the car slowed and get as much rotation as he possibly can through the chicane. Of course, there is traction control and ABS in these LMGT3 cars, so they do have that aid. Still very tricky to nail a lap and just get these cars to comply to the inputs you want them to do. They are quite heavy machines, of course, are all road cars made into these World Endurance Championship specs. Something's happened to Carl Fenton a little bit further back as he's now dropping down throughout the field. I think he may have had a slight spin. Let's quickly have a look. And yes, he's done what Glenn Burry just did a few laps ago and had a spin of his own. And that's unfortunate to see there from the Ferrari driver, because he was running quite well inside that top 10.
Certainly, as we do see Fenton already looking to get back on the attack as they head their way down towards turn number 1. And then we'll see what can happen here. But of course, Fenton, yeah, I think the issue is with heading up towards, I think that's turn 13, because you're trying to get on the brakes and you're also turning. With these cars, the brake bias tends to be a little bit, you know, a little bit more on the front compared to the rear. So you lock your ears easier, and it's so easy just to go round. And once you lose the car, there's no saving it. Of course, Berry did that in qualifying and in the race, and then we saw Fenton do that just. So I think for a lot of drivers going through that section there, just be a little bit more cautious. There's no point pushing the car like hell through there unless you need to make up some positions. And being as we've got an hour and 20 minutes left, it's not that You don't need to really be sending it that hard so early. As we'll keep an eye on, and I imagine we'll see many more people make mistakes through into that corner. But looking at the gaps here, Max, Wrench has got a 1.2 second gap over Juddy. That came down by 0.6. But then also Parker has really started to drop away from Juddy and Wrench. So maybe he's thinking more about the battle with Stevens and Davidson behind rather than, well, what can I do to get ahead? He knows he's probably got no chance.
Yeah, it seems like these top two have really checked out. So for Ollie Parker, it's just hold on to the podium. See if he can get this one to the line. Wrench sets the fastest lap of this race. And that time around, it was Juddy just a tenth slower. So he is still hanging in there. Is the Mustang against the BMW. And yeah, these cars are very, very tricky to drive, and of course, as you mentioned, at that very corner, it's a very much a one-line corner as well. If you dip a tyre just a little bit wide, either onto the marbles or just get a little bit of the curb wrong on the exit of the left-hander before as you're swooping round onto the brakes, it can just send that rear of the car out and you're going into a spin. David Wrench is still setting purple first sectors, even though we have done quite, of course, 6 laps on these tyres so far. So it shows the longevity these tyres do have, and also just the confidence these drivers are slowly getting. Of course, over an hour and a half race, especially if you are very clean and very tidy, you just keep finding time upon time upon time. You brake later, you get on the throttle earlier, and you just constantly keep building confidence, even in stuff like races, because of course you're just getting that valuable track time, and you're just trying some different things, maybe just testing your luck a little bit.
Indeed, I think these long races, if you're not fighting for first or second, and you know you've got no chance of fighting for it, it's Juddy. What's happened to Juddy? He's made a mistake somewhere.
Oh,
he's
spun!
Around.
Joe Juddy has spun on the exit of the corner. We said that was very, very difficult indeed. The penultimate corner of the circuit, and the Mustang, who was looking for a destined second place, even battling for the race win a little bit later on, has just gone round and undone all his hard work. He was keeping with the BMW in front of him. It may have been a few attempts into the hands of David Wrench lap by lap, but he also was able to claw it back every so often. Let's see exactly what happened. And yes, it's just getting onto the power out of the penultimate corner. A very, very tricky part of the circuits. We've seen drivers spin on the entry. On the exit, you're off camber. And unfortunately there for Joe Juddy here, Nathan, he's gone round. And that is certainly going to put a smile onto David Wrench's face.
Certainly. I think even though Wrench is quicker, you don't want Juddy there sitting behind, because all it does, it means he makes a mistake and Juddy's right there. Whereas now he's got an 8-second gap. He can make a minor mistake and get away with it. He could even make a bit of a medium level mistake and probably get away with it, given he's got such a gap. And with his pace, if he makes a mistake, loses 5 seconds, he'll build it back up again quite comfortably. So this is a very good position now for Wrench, because he's got all the pressure off of his shoulders. However, though, given the pace we've seen from Joe Juddy, as long as he didn't get damaged, which I don't think he did, I still think he'll finish second now, because he's only about 6 seconds back from Ollie Parker. Well, him and Wrench both took 6 seconds out on Ollie Parker within 6 laps. So with over an hour to go, I'd imagine it's got to be second place still for Juddy, because he's very quick. You know, he's made a mistake, but he's still on top pace.
Yeah, it certainly is still on top pace. It's just about if he makes mistakes like that again, maybe if that has flustered him a little bit, if he gets a little bit too aggressive making his way through the field and he makes eventual contact. They're really the big factors that he has remaining, of course, in this one. But I am expecting him to be able to make his way quite nicely back up through the field. He certainly does have the pace to do so. And it's also just how much damage that did do to the tyre as well. Does he have some flat spots now, thanks to spinning around and having to get straight onto the anchors to keep it out of the wall? And then that could cause some overheating issues and just some grip issues in general. So his gap on this lap to Tim Bob was brought down by around about half a second to the Lexus in front. Of course, he was recovering at the end of that one. And so for Juddy here, Nathan, it's now just try and put those laps in, clear your mind, and go again.
Indeed, I think he'll be quite annoyed now, but give it a lap or two, he'll probably be back in the zone again. He's not that far behind the back of Tim Bob in 5th, so you'd imagine lap or two is probably going to dispatch the Lexus, who's doing a great job. The only Lexus racing tonight, and he's up in the top 5. I know at one point it was the best car, but I'm not sure about now. But either way, Bob's doing a great job to get that car up into the top 5. Whether it'll last there, we'll have to wait and see. But I'd imagine Juddy will be on the attack very, very shortly. I mean, he's actually brought the gap down to David Wrench, who was over 15 seconds back. It's now 14.5. But I think that also could be then a factor of David Wrench going a little bit slower because he knows he hasn't got to push as hard. So, you know, that might be why Wrench has thought, right, no one's near me. Everyone's 8 or so seconds back. I can just be a little bit more careful, a little bit more conservative. And maybe, if he can try and save the energy and go a little bit longer on his stint. I mean, in terms of energy percentage, they're all on around the same, all around 72%. But if Wrench can save a little bit, that could help him later on in the race.
It certainly could, indeed. It can certainly help Wrench a lot, and of course mean that he has a shorter second stint at this one. So it is going to be interesting now to see how David Wrench now plays this one from a strategic point of view. Juddy just set the fastest final sector and brought down that gap by 1.1 seconds to Tim Bob in front. But of course, we're now looking at the battle between Ollie Parker and Tom Stevens, as of course these two were battling for third. They're now battling for second. They've dropped Peter Davidson over the course of the past few laps. He's now 11.7 seconds back from David Wrench, so he's about 2 seconds behind on Tom Stevens. And it's just interesting to see how well Ollie Parker is actually dealing with this pressure from Stevens, because he's not really let up, has the BMW, except from that small little blip where we had that battle between Davidson and Stevens. He's been all over the back of that Porsche, and Parker's just not seemed to have flinched at all. He's kept his pace, he's kept his rhythm. Stevens hasn't really had a sniff of an opportunity just yet. No,
maybe he's getting some extra power from that Mango Loco Monster livery. I do like the liveries. I think Wrench has also got a Monster one. I think he's got the white Monster, which is beautiful. Very nice liveries, I've got to say. Great work by everybody who makes those for this. And I think we can also comment on the one for Tom Stevens as well. I do like that livery. Now, I'd imagine that's... It says the Bend on the front, so is that named after the track The Bend? I'd imagine so, potentially. I'm not sure.
I think it might be. I'm not too sure either.
I don't know where the Bend is, but I know there is the Bend as a track.
Yeah, I do. I don't know. Yeah, I know what you're on. I think it might be an Australian track.
I don't know. I wish I knew.
If anyone knows exactly where that track is, please let us know.
I'll have a look. I'd imagine I was wrong, but we'll see.
We shall see. But
it's in. Oh, it is in Australia.
Oh, it is.
Hey, we got it right.
Nathan has his geography on point, ladies and gentlemen. But for Stevens, it's just... This must be so agonising. Yes, we've still got an hour and 12 minutes to go. There's still a long old way into this race. But especially when you have the pace to keep with the car in front and keep quite close to it, to not even have an opportunity for an overtake, it must get quite frustrating inside that cockpit.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not the quickest driver, but I have done quite a bit of driving. You know, in LMU, I race in over in F1, and it is very frustrating because the thing is, when you're stuck behind someone, especially, you know, the more realistic sim games, you know, you're going to start to get that dirty air. It's going to start to overheat the tyres. And then that makes you a little bit frustrated because you're like, well, I should be ahead of them. I'm quicker, but I can't get through. There's no opportunity. And that's where, for some drivers, things start to spiral downwards. Now, given that there's still over an hour left, I don't think that Tom Stevens has quite reached that stage. But if this was like 10 minutes left, for example, he probably would be quite annoyed. So I think he's not going to push too hard to get ahead, but he's going to do what he can to have some sort of opportunity. As we do see David Wrench again with a decent lap, a 1:42.1. But I've been looking at Juddy's laps, and he's never been that far away. The last couple of laps, he's been quicker than David Wrench. So he's bringing that gap down quite nicely. Juddy, into 5th now, of course, got that move done ahead of Bob. He was already a second quicker than Davidson on the last lap. So you'd imagine there, with him being only a couple of tenths behind Max, there's a battle for 4th on the cards here. And I think Davidson will be quite disheartened, being as he was comfortably 3rd in qualifying and now he's struggling to hold on to the top 5 in the race.
Yeah, he really is struggling here, is Davidson. Of course, got overtaken by Parker and Stevens on the opening lap, tried getting the move back done onto Stevens to no avail, and then from that point onwards it just fell further and further and further away from his fellow BMW driver. You can see Juddy so much later on the brakes as we are on board with the Mustang inside the cockpit of the Ford as we now head down into the chicane. Are we going to see a late braking move by Juddy, or is he just going to sit behind Davidson for now? He's so much more confident on the brakes and carries so much more speed through the corner, but just no opportunity opening just yet. Are we going to see a lunge into this next right-hander? It's going to be very difficult to do if he does. No, we'll just elect to follow through. Gets the exit. Can he find a nose down the inside here? He's looking for it later on the brakes. Just not opening the door wide enough for a lunge, but he's going to try it into the final corner, of course. It's a very wide entrance. There's contact! Juddy into the side there of Davidson, and they're still banging wheels on the exit of the corner. I don't think Davidson will be too best pleased with that on the exit of the corner now as we drive down that main straight. Tucked into the slipstream now is the BMW. He'll be looking to fight back and throw a lunge of his own, maybe to the inside or even around the outside. Maybe try to get some payback onto the Mustang down the straight, who squeezes all the way to the outside. Juddy on Davidson as around the outside will go in the BMW, who tried it on Stevens on that on the previous lap a few laps ago, and unfortunately once again that outside line not working. But for Davidson there, I think he will not be very happy with how Juddy got through.
No, I would imagine that could go off to the steward room. It was a little bit careless. It was way too late on the brakes for Juddy, and he just miscalculated it slightly and tapped the back of Davidson, and then they carried on making contact through the final corner. Now, there was no... I think it's a bit silly, though, from Juddy there, because he's still going to have a chance at P2, I think, being as how quickly he's making his way back through the field. But if that's penalisable, which I think it potentially could be, depending on the steward's thoughts, he's put himself with a bit more threat now, because if he gets a penalty, he's going to have to make sure he's got even more of a gap over some of those drivers. And doing something like that when you've got over an hour to go and you're not really losing time from that car, he could have waited and gone for it on the straight. And then he knows for a fact there's no chance of any sort of repercussion for it. So I think, yeah, a little bit silly there by Juddy. But we'll see what happens. Depending on what the POVs and views, the stewards might think differently. But I think that's could land him in a tad bit of trouble there.
Yeah, and hopefully for Davidson's sake as well, and for Juddy too, that no damage was put onto either car, because that was quite a whack to the side of the BMW from the Mustang. So for Peter Davidson, he might now come under pressure from Tim Bob behind. Juddy sets another fastest final sector. It's a full yellow on the timing tower, and then just that one purple from Joe Juddy through that final sector. So it shows there's still life in the tyre. Maybe not through the first part of the lap, but he's managing them well, even making his way through the field. And after that spin, that he's still just got enough grip to be able to get the power out of the corners.
Certainly, and I think that the tyres do last quite a long time. Whether he might have to change one or two of them in the pit stops, but he won't have to change all four. I don't think anyone has to change all four, but he might have to change a couple. But the thing is, though, which is good for Juddy, is that the screen keeps lagging for me, and he keeps jumping around everywhere, and I keep thinking he's gone off, but no, he hasn't. It's just having a bit of lag. I think the good thing is for Juddy now, he's broken away from Davidson and Bob. He's got 4 seconds of clean air to Stevens. Now he's not going to worry about cars ahead. He can start to maybe bring that gap down a little bit to David Wrench. I mean, he did that, and then he got involved in the battles, and it's gone up by another second. So he's got a bit of a chance now just to try and bring down the gap to Wrench, and of course, at the same time, bring it down to Stevens and Parker. But then that could turn into quite an interesting battle for second, third and fourth. Parker, Stevens and Juddy. You've got Parker, who's really trying to hold on to his first podium. Stevens, who's also trying to hold on to his first podium. And then you've got Juddy, who wants to be back where he's finished in every single race so far, which is second place, and try his best to not lose that many points to David Wrench, who's probably going to win this race.
Yeah, Wrench certainly looking like he's going to win this race at the moment. 11 seconds clear. Juddy once again with a fastest final sector, and even with all that battling, he's not lost too much time. He's only lost about a second after trying making his way past 2 cars and having some contact. Talking about that contact, let's quickly have a look back at it now. As you can see, is Juddy on the inside, late on the brakes, and he just goes into the side. And then also, I don't know if he's lost the car there as well, but there's a secondary piece of contact that is a bit of a bigger whack than the first. So for Juddy, I think that certainly will come under hot water. If he's able to build a gap come the end of the race to Stevens and Parker, he should be fine, even if he does get a penalty. But if he's maybe makes another mistake or gets stuck behind these two in front of him, it certainly could have some dire consequences, especially when it comes to his championship chances.
Certainly could, so have to keep an eye on that, and of course we'll keep an eye on all the stewards' enquiries later on, so when we come back for round 5, we'll be a little bit up to date on what's going on. I mean, one thing we can talk about now, being as the race is dying down a little bit, point system, of course, it's 25 points for first, and then it goes all the way down to 1 point for 15th. So everybody here is going to score a point. So the good thing is you're not going to have drivers retiring because they're a minute back from 10th, for example, and that they've got no chance of scoring. Everybody here has a purpose to serve in this race. So there's a battle for lots of points. And of course, you get 2 points for pole position, and you get a point for the fastest lap. So there's lots on offer. And I think the great thing about that is it gives everybody an opportunity to score, because it's quite clear that a lot of drivers here aren't on the same level. I mean, we're in half an hour, and there's a 1 minute and 9 second gap back to 13th. So I think the good thing is it gives everybody that purpose that they can score points and that they are here to earn something from it. Because if you turned up and you're always going to be a minute off at the flag and you're never going to get a top 10, you're not going to bother. A lot of drivers wouldn't. So everybody here has their opportunity to earn some decent points. But I mean, Max, what do you think of the point system? Because of course, me and you do a lot of F1. It's first to 10th, and that's kind of it. As we have had a flag in that Brad Jones going round.
Yes, at the final sector there. But I like the point system. It's very much... It reminds me of the British Touring cars. Of course, that's 1 to 15 as well. So it does reward even the drivers in their own little battles at the back of the field, as you mentioned. They can have their own little battles with drivers a bit more on their pace, and it gives them an opportunity to score points to their own championship and have their own little rivalry within the championship, even if it's for the lower places. But it's good that we have it down to 15th, and of course it does also mean that drivers that make mistakes, like Glenbury here tonight, even though he's 15th, completely last by a lap, he's still going to get a point out of it if he finishes the race. It rewards finishing a race. I've got
a bit of information, Max, which we can have a little bit of a talk about later on. So, incident between car 12 and car 72, which is Joe Juddy and Peter Davidson, is to be investigated after the race. So it has been noted by the stewards, so that will make things interesting. And now, we don't sound stupid for saying it could be a penalty, and then it turns out nobody thought it was. It's been investigated, so there's something there which the stewards are saying, right, we need to have a look at this, because obviously, you know, there could be an issue with what's gone on. So that could loom over... Well, I don't think Juddy will know about it, because he's, you know, probably in his own world, but after the race, depending on what the gaps are, he's going to think, well, if I get a penalty, why did I send it there? Why did I not just wait 5 seconds to send it down the straight? And I suppose sometimes that comes with a lot of fast drivers. They want to get moves done quickly. Max Verstappen's a perfect example. You don't want to be stuck behind someone. You get a bit annoyed and you send it. So it's an interesting one, isn't it, there for Juddy? I can understand both sides of the argument, but I think, yeah, he might be in a bit of trouble. I mean, what do you think, Max, for that incident? Because, I mean, I think it's probably going to be... It's not going to be a major penalty, but I'd imagine he might get some, you know, either a small penalty or maybe a warning and just saying, don't do that again.
I think it will be a small penalty on that one.
Yeah.
Maybe it depends on if I think it depends if Davidson got damage and how bad that damage was, but I also think it was a push to pass. He broke too late, used him as a brake, and went into him. Of course, it's up to the steward's discretion, so we'll still wait on what they'll see, but I don't see why that won't be a penalty. It's just a bit rash, a bit silly, and of course when you're trying to make your way through the field after a mistake, you can get a little bit hot-headed, as we mentioned a few laps earlier before that happened, that he could be a little bit too aggressive and hit someone or just make a little bit of contact, and unfortunately that did happen. So of course he won't know about it unless he has an engineer to tell him, and that will just loom over this race now. So of course these are results anyway, even without stewards inquiries, are unofficial, but that just confirms them being unofficial once again. And on that last lap, he was 2 tenths quicker than David Wrench. But that gap's somewhat stabilised between Juddy and Wrench. It's around about 15.3 seconds, and it has been for quite some time. So for the Mustang driver at the moment, he's not making inroads on the leader, but at least he's keeping pace with him.
Certainly, and I'm going to put it out there because I know a lot of drivers like to watch the broadcast back. I'm not criticising you at all, Joe. I'm probably worse when it comes to making contact like that. I get very annoyed in my league races. So don't worry, no, I'm not criticising you because I have the exact same mindset. I just want to make that clear. I don't want to make enemies already. We've only been here one race.
Already making an enemy on the circuit. Juddy will be out for revenge now, mate. I think on the pair of us, actually, after that. But it's just one of those accidents. Of course, it doesn't reflect on Juddy as a driver. It's just one where you can get a little bit hot-headed. Of course, it's hot here on the UK as well at the moment. So it does also mean that the heat can take a toll. Even though you are in a sim rig, it still can get quite hot, and you can still get excuse me, you can still get, of course, quite hot-headed, so it can just happen and you get a little bit rash. And it could have just been a complete misjudgment. He thought the move was on and it wasn't. So, unfortunately for Juddy, he's going to potentially face a penalty. And between Parker and Stevenson's, that gap is still around about half a second between the pair. They have just not, they've been inseparable all race. One's not been definitively quicker than the other, but Stevens is just there and thereabouts. But whenever he puts in a quick lap, Parker does as well.
Ooh, that was close. That's probably the closest we've seen them for quite a while. But if you look behind, when you get a chance to see the rear view from the beamer, you can see Juddy there. Car 12, closing in quickly and back in this battle for second place. Of course, he dropped down to P6 after he made his mistake at turn 15, which is a tricky corner. It's an easy place to go wide, to lock up and spin the wheels. But now he's only 3 seconds away from second place, and he's only a couple of seconds away from third. So we'll keep an eye on this because it's definitely going to heat up. And I think with Stevens knowing that Juddy's now there, he might have to get a move on the back of Parker, because if he loses time battling Juddy, that allows Parker to run away. So I think Tom Stevens here might need to get a bit of a move on because he looks a little bit quicker. He just can't, he's not close enough in the right places, which is his issue.
Yeah, I think he is going to get a little bit of a hurry up, and I think we are seeing this now with his pace. Especially over the course of this past lap, he's stayed around about 4 to 3 tenths of a second back. This is the closest he's really been all race. And he is now going to make his way through the final corner, try to get a slingshot exit. That BMW is a little bit faster than the Porsche in a straight line. And we'll see what he's going to be able to deliver as we go on board with the BMW in the slipstream. You can see him getting closer and closer as Parker will defend on the inside. He's going to hug that white line. Is Stevens going to look to the outside? Yes, he does. He makes a late lunge to the outside. He'll be late on the brakes. Of course, we've seen this from Davidson. That's not worked. Is the up and under going to work for the BMW? That Porsche can be quite trigger happy on acceleration, but Parker holds on to the position well, doesn't get flustered by the car behind, and holds his composure nicely. Of course, as they battle, Juddy will get closer. So for Stevens, he needs to make the move. Runs a little bit wide out of turn 3. And he's now going to just follow Parker through this agonisingly long right-hander. Very easy to understeer wide and off the road. But for Parker, he still holds on to this second place. Stevens, I think, is now backed off to maybe call the tyres and try once again.
I think this is a superb performance from both Parker and Stevens. Of course, Parker's best finish was 6th place back in Monza. And for Stevens, it was a top 5 in the first round at Silverstone. So they've done a great job to now be fighting for a podium. I think, of course, if Juddy gets through, they're still fighting for 3rd and 4th. So it would easily be both drivers' best finishes. And it just shows that they've turned it up a notch here, heading to Fuji. Of course, it's going to, it's a great calendar, lots of brilliant tracks in LMU. And I think the good thing about LMU is that you've got a big mixture of circuits. You've got, a few easier circuits, you've got a couple of difficult ones. And I think Fuji's difficult, one, because of the track layout, but also you don't race on it everywhere. I think this is one of the only games where it's probably where it's properly implemented in. Other games, it's more of a mod. Of course, F1 don't race at it. So for a lot of these drivers, it's probably their first time touching the track when they head onto LMU. So it's always that little bit more difficult because it's not like a Silverstone or a Spa where you know the track. Here, there's probably drivers on this grid that are still learning the circuit as they're going. I mean, I know Fuji a lot, commentator did here a lot, but when I go onto the track, it's such a different perspective of actually getting it right with the turn in and the throttle and the brake. Everything just takes a bit of a different perspective and a lot to get used to.
Certainly does indeed. It's now heading down into turn one a little bit further back. We got Bomber Brown and Pausland as they now go side by side into the first corner. And it is going to be Pausland who just holds on. Just behind these two is Edward Jones as well. So we've got a three-way scrap for 8th place at the moment. Is going to be Pausland that holds on through that first sector. Of course, a little bit further up, that gap now about a second between Parker and Stephen. So this now is going to be our closest scrap on the circuit, and it's wide from Pausland. This might give Bomber Brown the opportunity. He looks to the inside, and no, misjudges it into the back of the sister BMW, and Pausland off the road and falls behind Edward Jones as well. Bomber Brown tried a risky lunge to the inside, caught out by how early Pausland was on the brakes, and this might allow Edward Jones to go for a move to the inside into the chicane on Bomber Brown, but no, we'll just have to sit behind. Here, of course, over in 9th place for now, but for Bomber Brown, another incident that he's involved in this race. The first time was not his fault. This one, he is unfortunately the cause of the crime, and that certainly is going to be looked at, I think, by the stewards. And for Pausland, an innocent bystander in that one.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there could have been an element where maybe Pausland, broke a little bit earlier, but either way, the driver behind you, you've got to keep an eye on that and be aware of what other drivers could do. So I think Bomber Brown could be in a tad bit of trouble there. Of course, luckily for Pausland, it was one of the corners where there's not a barrier right at the exit, as Bomber Brown's been given a 5-second time penalty. So that was a very quick penalty given, I'd imagine, by the stewards. And I think he's got away a little bit lightly there, personally.
I think
because that was a big misjudgment. But it's not an unfair penalty. I think it's just a little bit lenient for him.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit lenient. I think there might have been 5 because, of course, Pausland was able to get back onto the road quite quickly and recover. But still.
Also, it's not like he's doing it every week either.
Exactly. So it is a one-off incident in that one. But unfortunately there, that brought to the end a brilliant battle between the pair. And, of course, they were battling tooth and nail throughout the majority of that first sector. It was a risky lunge. Of course, that corner, so tricky to get a move to the inside. You need a brilliant exit out of that right-hander before you hit the brakes. He tried it, misjudged how far along he was, and into the back of the other BMW he went. And back further up with Tom Stevens in another BMW in this field. Plenty of BMWs, of course. We now make our way down the main straight as we hunt down Ollie Parker once again. And of course, Glenn Berry has retired from the race. The cause of that was due to his game crashing. So not a manual retirement. Unfortunately, the game deciding it was his time to pack up his bags, as Tim Bob has made a move on Davidson. Davidson has come into pit lane. So our first driver from the top 6 into the pits.
Indeed. So we'll see what goes on here for Davidson. I want to see if we can have a look somehow of how long the pit stop is. I don't think we'll be able to see, but we can make a rough estimate, I suppose. So, of course, Davidson's in. He's going to be the first one to bite of everybody in the field. And, it's going to be an interesting one. He's gone very early. So I'd imagine he's going to have to go to pretty much full 100% on the energy. I'm just keeping an eye on his energy level, and he does go straight to 100. And then, of course, it depends as well if he changes tyres, which I think he might, because the car's lifted up into the air.
Certainly might be. We weren't really getting the best view there from the TV camera. We were just staring up one of the walls. So we've gone to the bonnet of Davidson. Of course, he was around about 25 seconds back when he came into the pits from David Wrench, because that's how far back Tim Bob is. So see how long he certainly does take still in the pit box. It's taking him quite a while. He's at least spent 50 second hits for... Now he's coming out now. Car, of course, rotates back to the left, back onto the power, and he's come out a lap down compared to David Wrench. So, you do lose about a lap in the pits if you do change your tyres and everything. So, that is big news for everybody else, especially if they stay out longer. They're going to minimise that time. As here comes Stevens to the outside of Ollie Parker. Tried it once, trying it again. His second time the charm. No, it is not. Parker once again holds firm and defends very, very well. But if you're coming in now, if this is where your pit window is, you're going to spend a lap in the pit lane before you can get going again.
Indeed. So that's going to, of course, cost Davidson a lot of time, but everybody's got to lose that time at some point in the race. So, yeah, Peter Davidson up to full % energy to take him through to the end, and I'd imagine 50 minutes. You should be more than set for that, so we should be fine to go to the end. It's just whether his tyres can hold out as well as others can, because of course he won't be that far away from the likes of Barb, and I think Jennings wasn't that far back either. So, you know, it'll all be depending on how his tyres are compared to theirs after they make their first pit stops, and well, hopefully their only pit stops in this race, as we have 49 minutes to go. So we're nearly at the halfway point of what's been a very exciting race so far. Not in terms of the battle for first, because that ended after lap 1, but for second, third and below, there's been lots of key battles to keep an eye on. As David Wrench, he's continuing on for another lap of racing, but the good thing for him is he can pit whenever he wants to. He's not got to go for the optimal, and you know, he's not going to go for the strategy which is going to lose him the least amount of time. He can go when he feels comfortable to. You know, if he prefers to go later, he can go later. If he wants to go earlier, he can, because he's got 15 seconds of a gap. So that's the good thing about leading in a race like this. You've got less pressure because you kind of can control. You're controlling the race. You do what you want to do, and sometimes when you pit, it causes others behind you. So then you're really in control of the race.
Yeah, it certainly does indeed. So this really does now open up the strategy to everyone. And what do they decide to do? Do you try go for the undercut? Do you go for an overcut, or what is your game plan? That is what's going to be now on these drivers' minds, as we've been racing now for 40 minutes. Nearly 40 minutes to remain. And for Stevens, it was a little bit wide through turn 3. Once again, wide on the exit of 4. So he's starting to struggle, I think, here with those front tyres, trying to get some bite out of him. And Joe Juddy, now certainly on the back of him. David Wrench has been the quicker of Juddy and, of course, himself over the course of these past few laps. That gap now up to 16.3 between the man in 4th and the race leader, the Juddy. How quickly is he going to make his way through onto Stevens and Parker, as we now make our way into the final sector? What is now the 24th time, lap 24 this is. Still plenty of time left to go in this race. Of course, here it is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't win it in the first few laps. It's over the course of an hour and a half race. And of course, you get a lot of mental fatigue as well in races like this, don't you, Nathan? Of course, especially when the corners just keep coming at you and they're so long. Mental fatigue is a big factor.
Definitely, and I think for someone like David Wrench, that's going to hit quite hard, because he's literally running with nobody. And you're in that calm of a state because you know you've got nobody to fight. It's like you just bury into the car, and there's kind of, it just becomes you for a moment, and eventually it does start to tire you out, because it's just the same thing lap and lap again, you know, over and over. Whereas lots of Parker, Stevens and Juddy, they've got things to keep an eye on. They've got to look behind, look ahead, and, you know, think about strategies and what to do. So, you know, for them it's not as mentally tiring because they've got something to keep them occupied. So yes, for Wrench, I mean, sometimes it can just be the case of, you know, just getting a little bit tired near the end of the race. He might drop off a little bit. We'll, you know, have to wait and see. You know, but on the other hand, for some drivers, when they're out in front and they're leading, they're happy and they're excited to potentially win again. So, you know, it can be two different tales for Wrench out in front. And of course, once we get to the end of the race, we'll be able to see which one is potentially correct. I mean, look how quickly Juddy's closed down. We've been talking and talking and talking, and already Juddy's got the same gap to Stevens as Stevens has to Parker. So he's now truly involved in this fight. But Max, energy-wise, Joe Juddy has got 20%. the two ahead have got 2% more than him, so they can potentially go a lap longer, or at least take a little bit less in the pit stop if they can't have a full lap extra.
They certainly can, and that could be quite the issue here for Juddy, and that could be quite a big thing for Parker and Stevens as we now make our way down the main straight. See Parker just trying to break the slipstream, move to the right and then back to the racing line, and Stevens will not be close enough by the time we get to the first corner, you would think, as Juddy sets another fastest final sector. He still keeps finding time for that final part of the lap, even when you think he can't anymore. It's Stevens late on the brakes, nearly into the back of the Porsche. There might have just been some slight contact between the pair on the exit of the first corner. Still no opportunity there. Stevens has only had a real look around the outside at turn 1 twice, and even then that move is never really on, so he's not had a proper attempt at the Porsche for quite a while, and now he's got Juddy all over the back of him too. He's certainly going to get quite panicked, I think, in that BMW, at least a little bit nervous. Just want to try and make his way through, but the issue with that is you can rush moves, you can be a little bit too rash, like we saw with Juddy making his way through the field here, can't you, Nathan? And that's where those mistakes, where you either go straight on or you take out your competitor, come through.
Yeah, certainly, as we have 44 minutes to go, so we're just over halfway through now. And of course, they've got one car ahead, which is one of the lapped cars. I'd imagine that car should move quite quickly out of the way. There's Bummer Brown's in as well, so he's made his next pit stop. And looking through the field, I think we've also got another gap closing in as well, which is going to be between Pelsland and Jones. They're only a second apart as well. So surprisingly, given that there's a 1 minute gap between first and 10th, you've got 3 battles on track, which are brilliant to keep an eye on. So, you know, there might not be the closest gaps, but there's still lots of little groups around. And that's a good thing about this series is, even though you've got drivers that are so far away from each other on pace, like of Jones and Pelsland, you know, they're fighting for some decent points because 7th and 8th here gets you 9 points and 8 points. So they're still fighting for some, you know, for a decent result, given the fact they're nowhere near the leader.
Certainly are indeed, and Stevens once again tried it round the outside. It's not able to get the switchback that he desperately needs. That Porsche just having the acceleration on the exit, and for Juddy, I think he's really just having to take avoiding action on the brakes here. He can't brake as late as he usually does. He's just making sure he stays out the back of the BMW in front of him. Of course, he's trying these different moves, trying to force a mistake here from Parker, and it's just not working. But Juddy is now the closer of the 3. He may now try and make a lunge onto the BMW, maybe into that final sector where we saw that controversial incident between himself and Davidson, which will be investigated after the race. And just look how much more speed he can carry through that first part of the chicane. Stevens will fight back in the middle part of it, will be able to get the power down that little bit easier, and now make his way into the final part of the lap. Up into the penultimate corner we shall go. Juddy just not seem close enough. Can he get the drive? Can he get the exit? Will Stevens make a mistake? No, he will not. Things will stay as they are. But this is where Parker can make his break for it here, Nathan. With Stevens being occupied with his mirrors, it means that Parker can maybe just try and streak that a little bit further clear.
Indeed, big chance for him to streak away, as I do think they're both coming in. So Parker and Stevens go in no. So Parker goes in, Stevens tucks in behind him and then has to immediately tuck back out, because obviously Parker was heading onto the brakes and Stevens was definitely not thinking about that. So Ollie Parker's in, the first driver in the top 5 to go into the pit lane. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what happens for him, because he was about 15 seconds away from David Wrench. So we'll have a look on the gaps in a minute and just see whereabouts it brings him out. But I'd imagine he should be comfortably ahead of Peter Davidson, who at the moment is the only other one who on a normal strategy has pitted so far.
Yeah, certainly is. Of course, Davidson came out about a lap down to Ollie Parker, and he's making his way now into only the first corner. I don't know if he's made mistakes a little bit later on, but here comes Ollie Parker back out onto the road. I think Peter Davidson might have made a big monumental error with his strategy choice, because it does not seem like it's worked out at all. But Parker weaving down the pit lane to try and get some temperature into his tyres. And Parker will come out around about 80 seconds shy of David Wrench. Probably around about 83 when he gets back up to racing speed. No, we'll call it 85. So he's lost about 70 seconds in the pit lane there, Nathan, to everybody around him. So if Stevens and Juddy are able to at least maybe even get 2 more laps out of this, they certainly could see themselves jumping the Porsche.
Certainly. Well, I'd imagine Juddy will be going in at least a lap earlier than Stevens, because Stevens has nearly just over 3% more energy than him, so he'll be able to go a little bit longer, I'd imagine. Looking in terms of energy, Ollie Parker has 79.2%. Davidson, who pitted earlier, has 82%. So, given that, imagine they can both get to the end, we know for a fact that Davidson is definitely safe because he's got more energy than what Parker's got. But I think then again, Parker will be safe anyway. It's quite a lot of energy to take to the end. And I keep going to say battery, but it's energy. 2 different things. Virtual energy is not the same. As yes, we'll keep an eye on the others. I'd imagine as well, the likes of Stevens and Juddy, they won't go too much longer because there's no point doing something silly and completely going out of sync in strategy. If you know it's going to work for Parker, it'll probably work for you as well. So you might as well just go with the rough pit stop of what everybody else is doing.
You might as well. Of course, for Parker, he can now go full guns blazing. At least for now, he doesn't have to conserve any energy, maybe just to extend that extra lap. He can at least push in the opening stages of this stint. Try and bring that gap back down. Of course, David Wrench got about 1% less than Tom Stevens. He's on currently 10.6, Stevens on 11.8. Oh, and you can see some traffic there in the way of Stevens, and this might invite Juddy to go around the outside for the penultimate corner, or maybe even try a lunge into the final one, but no, just it's not there. I do not think, unless he tries a lunge like he did on Davidson, was very late on the brakes, but we'll just have to sit behind. I think Juddy can get 1 more lap out of his Mustang with his virtual energy. For Tom Stevens, he can maybe get another 2. We make our way down that main straight. Neither of them do come into the pit lane. Ollie Parker through the first sector split. Is he finding any time? Has he got that car back up to speed? He certainly is. He set a personal best first sector. That shows he is pushing for it here, Nathan, and he's trying to bring that gap back down.
Indeed, this is crucial now for Ollie Parker for the next lap or 2, while Stevens and Juddy are getting caught up in a little bit of battling, just to bring that gap down so once they pit, he can be ahead. Because I think they all deserve to be 2nd place, but I think Parker's done a great job of staying there the whole race. So I think for him, he feels he'll feel to be a little bit more deserved of it because he's been there the whole time. Whereas, of course, Juddy made a big mistake, and Stevens has always been the 2nd runner to Parker in this race. As we have had a move there, Bomber Brown goes past Brad Jones, but Brad Jones is in the pit lane. The same goes as well for George Pelsland. He's been in as well for his first pit stop of this race. So we are now seeing everybody start to head in. In terms of energy, everybody's got less than 10%, so it's 2 laps maximum for everybody in the top 7 before they have to pit. Of course, Joe Juddy's got 5.1%, 8.6% for Tom Stevens. So I think Stevens can go again. Juddy, I'm not too sure on that, but they are just within a couple of tenths of each other here, Max.
They certainly are indeed, and this could be Juddy making the move into the final corner. We saw it on Davidson, that ended in contact, but no, Juddy elects to sit behind, maybe not lose as much time as he would. He does go for a battle, and I'm expecting him in this lap, or is he going to try extend it 1 more? Just try and get every last bit out of this car, and he is going for 1 more lap. 4.3% is what remains, and I think you can get away with having 3% remaining in these cars, so he just about has enough to get this one to at least the end of this lap as he looks to the inside into that first corner. Oh, so close between the pair, but they both just avoid contact. This is going to be aggressive racing all the way to the end of this stint. Tim Bob is into the pit lane. He couldn't make it to the end of this lap, and now through the left-hander into turn 4 we'll go. Is this going to be where Juddy gets a slingshot exit and looks for a lunge into the inside into the next left-hander? No, he does not. He's going to just have a different line and into the back of Stevens. And round goes the BMW. And he, actually no, was able to drift it through the corner. So brilliant car control there from Tom Stevens. But that would have cost them both dearly here against Ollie Parker.
I think Jordy there slowed down to let Stevens keep the position, because obviously he would have just shot through anyway. But of course, that's still, yet again, could end up in a bit of trouble because they've lost time to other cars. It's affected their race negatively. So, not ideal again there for Jordy, who's got 2% as they head their way through to the final couple of corners. He should be safe to get into the pits this time without running out of virtual energy. Of course, Stevens will be more than fine. I mean, he could probably go again. He's still got over 5%, whereas, of course, Juddy had 4% when he started this last lap. He's got 1.6% heading through the final corner. Now, that is what you call fine margins. We'll see when he heads in how much virtual energy he had left. But I think it's 1.2 at the moment. He's going to have less than 1% of virtual energy as he heads into the pit lane, Max. Let's see when it updates us again on the timing board. Don't know if it will update us again, but it is at the moment at 1.2%.
That is pinpoint perfection there from Joe Juddy to get that one in. But, of course, it does mean he spends a little bit more time. Even though it's a couple of seconds, it's still crucial seconds wasted in the pit lane. David Wrench has come in as well on that lap. So Tom Stevens is our new race leader. And he'll be the only driver, other than David Wrench so far in this race, to lead a lap. That's something for him to at least have in the back of his hand and be like, look, I led the lap and you guys couldn't. But for David Wrench, he's now trundling out of the pit lane. Where is Ollie Parker compared to Juddy? Parker is now making his way through the final corner, whereas Juddy is still in his pit box. I think the Porsche might still have this one thanks to that contact.
This is going to be close, as we'll have a little look at Juddy. He still stopped still, whereas Parker's making his way down the main straight. So this is perfect here for Ollie Parker. Of course, the time loss and the incident between Juddy and Stevens has allowed Parker to shoot past and have such an advantage, as Juddy is still in the pit lane. So has he maybe got some damage on that car, as it's going to be ready to go, and he's going to be so far behind. I mean, the gap between the leader and Parker is 67 seconds. Juddy is another 20 down the road. This is insane work by Parker. The question is, can he do the same to Tom Stevens? If so, P2 is in the bag.
Certainly is, and Stevens has now come into the pit lane. So did Stevens into the wall! Stevens overshot it into the pit lane. Oh, if that's suspension damage, that could be race over there for Stevens when it comes to that battle for even third place. So as he now comes into the pit lane, we'll stay with the BMW as he now gets things back underway. And we'll see what he can do. Of course, I think here the difference between Parker and Juddy was that Parker may have not taken tyres, whereas Juddy has. Juddy, of course, that Mustang does eat away at his tyres, so I'm not surprised if he needed to come in and maybe fit a new pair of tyres on. But it was
look at this here. Juddy is over 10 seconds behind Tim Bob, who was never anywhere with him. So that just shows how much time he's lost. So much time.
It certainly does.
Was it really worth it? Probably not.
I genuinely believe this may be for a tyre change there for Juddy, as coming out of the... No, and Tom Stevens is still in his pit box as well, compared to Ollie Parker. This has worked absolutely amazing here for the Porsche. I don't know if Stevens might be repairing the damage he got from barreling into the pit lane and hitting the wall. A real rookie error there from the BMW driver. But for Ollie Parker, what was looking like a nervy, a very battle-heavy second place where he was going to have to withstand attack after attack. He went for the undercut. He pulled the trigger first.
It's going to be close to Juddy.
And it's worked into his favour perfectly. And Stevens has come up behind Tim Bob. This has not gone well at all for Stevens or Juddy.
Well, look how close it is here. Juddy's not that far away at all from Tom Stevens. So they've both done what it seems to be the exact same pit strategy. And I think Juddy's ahead, barely, just about ahead by maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Juddy's got the jump.
Wow, this has really gone from bad to worse here from Tom Stevens, who thought, maybe, just maybe, I've got the energy, I can overcut. I can bring that gap down to Ollie Parker, spend less time in the pit lane. Turns out he spent about another 20 to 30 seconds more than the Porsche driver. Was it due to damage that he has picked up throughout this race? Was it because he changed tyres and Ollie Parker has not? Or was it just sheer strategical genius there from Ollie Parker, who has made it up into second place? and he has now got a 20-second lead to the next car in this train of Tim Bob. It's actually, no, I think Robert Jennings as well has pulled off a masterclass here too, because he was nowhere in this race. He was nowhere near contention for the top 3, but he pitted, I think, the lap after Ollie Parker, and he's now up into 3rd place. Brilliant stuff here.
He's doing a very good job. Is Robert Jennings in that Ferrari? I mean, it might be hard to hold on because 1, Juddy's very quick, and 2, he's got new tyres. But I think as long as Jennings is consistent, he's not got to worry about anybody behind. I think he'll be clear of Tim Bob. So you may, I think, looking at this here, maybe 4th place is on the cards here for Jennings, 5th place on the cards for Tim Bob. I mean, I want to have a look at the lap times in a moment. It was a 1:42.7 there for Tim Bob. It was a 1:42.1 for Joe Juddy. He's not that much quicker, 0.6. So maybe they've got a little bit too conservative with changing all the tyres when they didn't need to. And I think there must be a reason behind it, though, because Juddy's finished second, and second. He's not slow. He's obviously got some race IQ because he's done well in the last 3 races. So what has made him pit and end up coming out so far behind? Was it any damage potentially?
It could have been, because of course he hasn't made contact with just one. It's been 2 cars, one with Davidson, and even Davidson
in the same
took a while
part
in
of the car, wasn't it?
It was the same part, and Davidson also took quite a while in the pit lane. So I think it could have been mainly for damage here, because I think they might all have got some damaged suspension in all of that, and that takes a little while to fix. So for Davidson, for of course Stevens, and for Juddy, them all picking up damage has cost them dearly. And I think Stevens would have come out well clear of Juddy if he just did not barrel it into the pit lane like he did. That was a real rookie error. I don't know if he just misjudged his braking point, but he clobbered that pit lane wall.
Yeah, it's that's a weird one. He's misjudged it heavily. I mean that's a mistake I'd do easily. I mean, you're going from such a quick speed into a slow turn. It's such a slow turn. It's a little bit like, I suppose, Baku, or maybe a little bit like Jeddah. It's such a quick to slam on the brakes and get the car turned into the pit lane. It was going to happen to someone, wasn't it? But of course, it's a big shame for Stevens because he was running so well. In the top 3, he was actually fighting for P2 at some point, and he's not finished ever higher than 5th. So that would have been by miles his best point scoring finish. But also, in the standings, he sits at the moment P7 on 20 points. He's only 14 points behind 3rd. That's a big opportunity to jump up maybe 2 or 3 positions in the race.
It certainly is. So for Stevens, he's now got to really try and hustle for the rest of this one. And he's losing time to Juddy, who in turn hasn't really found too much time onto Tim Bob. I say that on the last lap it was a second found, but he's not breaking into that gap as quickly as you would expect. But for Robert Jennings, he is certainly struggling here, because that gap is now, it was around about 10 seconds between himself and Tim Bob. It's now 6, coming after about 3 or 4 laps over the course since we last checked in on him. So for Jennings, even though it could still be a 6th place, I think it's still a valiant drive. He's made the strategy work. And he's going to make Tim Bob, Juddy and Stevens have to work for the positions from him, because he's not going to just let him through. He's not going to just take this one lying down. There's 26 minutes to go in this one. You're not just going to give up easily. You're going to fight for every single part of the track you have now.
Certainly will do. I mean, there's some gaps further behind as well. It's only 4 seconds between Goad and Bomber Brown. So that's a battle to keep an eye on. Then you've got, of course, well, Jones and Davidson are in the world of their own, but then you got Stevens and Juddy, then you got Tim Bob and Jennings, and then Parker, who, I mean, he's also just running alone as well, the same as Wrench. You've got quite a few battles in this field. Looking in terms of energy, though, Tom Stevens has got a lot less than everybody. Because it's yellow, I can barely see what it says. I think it says like 40. I can't see. It's in yellow. 48%. There we are. 48. He's got about 6% lower than everybody else. But is that a concern, maybe? Has he cut it too tight? That's a bit weird that he's so much lower than everybody.
Well, as we know, it's around about 3% a lap. That's what we saw when, of course, and Juddy came into the pit lane. He had about 4% left, and he ended with 1.2. So we'll call it around about 3% a lap.
Yeah.
47% with the lap time after an hour. I think he might just make it, but only just.
18 laps left, maybe 18 or 17 laps left. 3% a lap. 3 times 18, I should know that. What's that? 54.
Ooh. He might have to come in again here.
That's just a rough estimate.
That is a rough estimate.
I mean, that's just my knowledge of darts, a treble 18. So I'm sure, is it 54 or is it 56?
It is 54.
54. So, I mean, given the fact there might be a lap less than what I've said, it might be 17 laps. It's still going to be around your low 50s. So that checks out with where everybody else is at the moment. So it's going to be tight for Stevens, very tight. So he's going to have to do a lot of work.
He certainly is. Stevens is going to have to do a lot of Lyco, and he's really fallen off the pace compared to, of course, Juddy in front. That gap now around about 6 seconds between the pair. And talking about a gap that's coming down quite quickly, this is Tim Bob against Robert Jennings. On the last lap, Robert Jennings set a 45.8. Tim Bob, a 42.2. He's 3.6 seconds faster in that Lexus. And
easy move, isn't it, really?
Surely going to get by. Yeah, it's an easy move. When you have that much of a pace disparity, it's just going to be an easy move on the brakes. It's just the difference.
That's a top 3 on the cards here for Tim Bob comfortably as well, because he was only 10th slower than Joe Juddy on the last lap. He was a 42.2 and Juddy a 42.1, and Juddy's not been into the 41s at all on this stint. So, at the moment, Tim Bob does what he's doing, and he's got a P3 comfortably. I mean, you've got, what, as we said, about 16, 17 laps left. As long as he's not like 6/10 a lap slower, he's got it covered. So Tim Bob could be on for the blinder here, as Fenton's had another mistake and spun around. I mean, looking at the best result for Tim Bob, it was 4th in round 1.
Oh, Jennings round! Sorry to cut in, Nathan, but Jennings round into the final corner, taps the side of Tim Bob, and that's an easy move there from Tim Bob, but must have cost him some time. I think just weaving down the straight to make sure the car's in order and make sure that the wheels are all facing in the right direction. But for Tim Bob, he put the pressure onto Jennings. Jennings has crumbled, but unfortunately that would have cost the Lexus some time, but he's just got the gap in hand against Juddy.
As I was saying, sorry, Tim Bob's got 2 4th places and a 12th. He's yet to step on the podium. Now is his opportunity. And as I said, Juddy's never been into the 41s. He goes and does a 141.9, which is only a couple of tenths off of his best lap. And one thing I've noticed as well is the gap between Wrench and Parker. That's barely gone up in like half an hour. So Wrench now is just so consistent. He's happy just to keep putting in the same lap times and just stay where he is. He's not eager on trying to put even more gap, more of a gap to Parker. He's 18 seconds back. He's comfortable with that. He can just put down the pace and in 20 minutes' time probably take his fourth victory in 4 races. I mean, points-wise, that'll put him on, 84.25. That's like 109 points, whereas Juddy, in probably what is going to be 4th place, that's only 13 points. I mean, that's going to give him like a 35-point lead, Wrench.
Yeah, he's going to have a huge lead at this point, is Wrench. It's going to be quite a margin for the rest to bring down, and especially if you're winning races constantly. And, of course, he'll be the only race winner, as Fenton once again has a spin in the final sector, and this time I think might have tapped the wall ever so slightly. But when you're winning races like Wrench, of course, he's the only race winner this season. And, of course, this is the halfway stage of the season, round 4. We have an 8-round calendar, so this is the halfway point. To have a 35-point lead, then going into the remaining, of course, 5 races. 4 races, should I say. It's going to be very difficult if he can carry on putting into these performances. I think he can finish 2nd for the remaining rounds and just about be able to take it if, of course, Juddy has another performance like this. So it's going to be very disappointing for Juddy, knowing that this was a moment, this was a chance.
Tim Bob.
Oh, Tim Bob, 5 seconds. He must have tapped Jennings then into the final corner for that incident to happen.
He was 4 seconds off on that lap. He did a 1:46. So has he done a little bit of a silly mistake, like what we saw with Juddy potentially, by getting a little bit too eager, being a little bit silly into the final corner, and costing his potential podium? At the moment, the gap between him and Juddy is 5 seconds, so that could be it for Tim Bob. It could have been potentially his first podium, but as it seems to be now, that will not be the case. Juddy might just get it if he can get past Jennings, which I'd imagine he will do because he was 2 seconds a lap quicker on the last lap. Juddy might just about rescue a podium, but I think one word, not one word, I think some words have to be said about Ollie Parker, who's still consistently 30 seconds ahead of everybody else, ignoring Wrench, of course, in front. This has been a superb drive by Parker, and I know Wrench has done very well, and he's put the fastest lap in by over a second, and he's 20 seconds ahead. But for me, if Parker finishes there, there's no way that he's not driver of the day, in my opinion, because he's pulled a blinder on the strategy and somehow kept himself within 20 seconds of David Wrench, which is not an easy task.
Oh, it's not an easy task at all, and to think as well, this will be his best result of the season. He was put under so much pressure from Tom Stevens as well throughout the whole of that first stint, and then, of course, Joe Juddy came along as well and added that little bit more pressure with a second car involved, and he didn't crumble. He did not make one mistake, didn't put a foot wrong, then switched it on when he needed to, when he put that strategy into motion, and it's worked out brilliantly for him, and he can't ask for a better race. Of course, you can ask for a race victory, but when you've got David Wrench in the field like we do today, I don't think that was ever really on the cards for Ollie Parker, so I think he can be very happy with how he's driven today, and even for Tim Bob as well, even though he's got that 5-second penalty to his name. We're going to quickly have a look at that incident now as we're heading up into that final corner. Yeah, just tagged him round, and unfortunately for Tim Bob, that is a stonewall penalty. It's a kind of like we saw with Davidson and for Juddy, just a little bit worse.
Indeed, yes, not good at all there from Tim Bob, who's unfortunately going to lose himself the podium there, I'd imagine, because that gap has come down to less than 5 seconds, as a new fastest lap was in order for David Wrench. Let's have a look at what that was. It was a 1:41.245. And Max, do you want to know how much he improved by?
How much?
1,000th of a second.
Oh, wow.
His best lap was a 1:41.246 originally.
Oh, wow. David Wrench. I mean...
fine margins.
Fine margins, to say the least. And to think, if he's not changed tyres, and he's done this whole, he's done 41 laps on them, improved by 1,000th of a second shows maybe at the start there was a bit more pace in hand. He just wasn't showing.
Right. We've got a bit of a twist in the tail here, because that gap between Bob and Juddy has gone up again. It's now 6 seconds. So, because I'm so bad at maths, I'm going to quickly put my gap onto interval so I can see what the gap is. But at the moment, it's 4.5 to Jennings and another 1.7 back to Juddy. So that's around 6 seconds here.
Yeah, it is around. Oh, yeah, because
he might just hold on.
Juddy had a really poor lap on that last lap. He set a 42.8. That is really poor for Juddy's standards, and that dropped him 5 tenths further back from Tim Bob, who set a 42.3. So Juddy must have made a mistake somewhere on the road, or just had a really off lap, maybe losing some confidence in that Mustang as it starts to burn its tyres away. Of course, we saw that dip in performance at the end of the last stint, even though he was catching up to Stevens and Ollie Parker. See what he can now do. Of course, Robert Jennings in front should be an easy overtake. There's no doubt about that. No offence to Jennings, but he's just not up to scratch. He's not up to the pace of these drivers that are coming onto the back of him. So as he now looks to the inside, holds the tighter line, he'll be the exit for Juddy, and this should be a nice easy move down into turn 1. You could just see the difference in the exit. Jennings takes that tighter line, can't get on the power, whereas Juddy here, Nathan, takes that wider, better racing line, and he's instantly all over him like a rash.
Indeed, it should be an easy move here for Juddy down towards turn 1. He pulls alongside the Ferrari. He's now half a car ahead. He's now just about a car ahead as they jump onto the brakes. It's very late though for Juddy, but he gets the car stopped, gets it to the apex, and move made. 4th place now for Joe Juddy. And he's got 0.4 of a second to find on the back of Tim Bob. Once again, that gap has came down. It's shot down by half a second. And this battle for third is truly on between two very quick drivers and between a Lexus and a Ford Mustang. As further back we saw a move happen. And I think it might have been Pelsland who went ahead of Tom Goad and now jumps himself into that final top 10 spot. But of course, everybody in the top 15 do get points. So it's not like you need to be in the top 10. It's just very nice to get those extra little points.
Certainly is indeed, and it can just help yourself out ever so slightly, even if you are looking for even a top 10 in the championship come the end of the season. As Robert Jennings has actually made a move back on Joe Juddy, who must have made a mistake, as the Ferrari instantly retaliates. So for Jennings, he tried to get the move back past, wasn't able to do so.
Yes,
and the gap
seconds.
Yeah, the gap has shot up between Tim Bob and Joe Juddy. It's now 6.5. It was about 5.6 heading into that chicane. So Juddy might have just outbroke himself ever so slightly. And this is working into Tim Bob's favour. But of course, even though Tim Bob has that 5 seconds here, ladies and gentlemen, there is still Joe Juddy under investigation for the incident with Peter Davidson. So we may see Joe Juddy get the position on the after the checkered flag falls, thanks to that 5 seconds. But come the end of this race, come stewards' reviews, the positions might be flipped again. So it is still up in the air. We don't know who has got the position just yet, unless, of course, Tim Bob does finish 5 seconds clear. Then he will hold on to that third place. But if Juddy does get him, it's not all over.
Tom Stevens is all over the back of Robert Jennings as well. He's only 1.8 seconds back. So Tom Stevens could be in the shape for a top 5 finish where, given he made a very poor pit stop and had a bit of contact and lost time, he would be very happy, I think, to, in the end, come home with 5th, given earlier on it was, you know, potential P3 or P4. So Stevens on the back of Jennings. That's a key battle to keep an eye on. Looking further ahead, though, of course, Juddy on the back of Bob. That gap 6.5 seconds. Last lap, it was a 143.5 for Joe Juddy. Of course, once again, that's not that bad of a lap. But considering that Tim Bob's in the mid to low 142s, it loses a lot of time for Juddy. So Tim Bob's just been so consistent at the minute. Juddy's going to have to do a lot of work in the next 13 minutes. That's what, 1 minute 40 a lap. So we'll just say 1 minute 30. That's 3. It's about what? Maybe 6 laps left remaining. Maybe 7 a push.
Yeah, around about that. And he's on 25%. So, oh, he might just make it, but there's a Ferrari spinning in front of him. That is going to be of Carl Fenton once again, who has gone round. He's not having much luck in that final sector, is he, Fenton? Spinning constantly, which is, of course, no fault of his own, but he's just not got the grip when he needs it. I think he might have gone the wrong way on the setup direction.
Indeed, yeah. It's been a little bit of a tricky car to drive for Fenton. Many mistakes made in this race, but I think also it's a difficult track as well. It's not easy to get right, so it's one of those where you can forgive drivers slightly. If it was at Silverstone or Spa, you'd be saying, right, you know, you've done something wrong there, but given it's at Fuji, I think you can let drivers off a tad around this track for making mistakes. Stevens is less than 0.4 behind the back of Robert Jennings, so this battle for P5 continues. I'd imagine it'll be a comfortable move eventually for Stevens because he's crawled that time down very quickly. And Joe Juddy, a lap later, has only brought that gap down by 0.2. So at the moment, Tim Bob's just about doing enough here. It's going to be close, but he's doing enough.
Certainly is. And of course, if Stevens is able to get by here, and if he can make it to the end on the energy, if he can get close enough and maybe start to hustle a little bit once he's past the Ferrari, he could still pick up a third place finish in this one, because you never know what could happen. If Juddy is able to catch up to the back of Tim Bob, there's a move to the inside from Stevens onto Jennings, and is this going to be his way through in a very opportunistic place to do so? Jennings would, of course, fight back into the penultimate corner. Is Stevens on the outside, and he is just going to be able to hold on to that one and take the position away and move his way up into P5. But, of course, if Juddy's able to catch up to Tim Bob in the next, I would say, 5 minutes, if he's able to really put his foot down, but on that last lap, they were very matched on time. It was a 42.1 for Tim Bob, a 42.0 for Juddy. it could still work into Stevens' favour, but he needs a miracle at this point. And there's some traffic in front of Juddy as well. I think that might just rule the Mustang out of contention.
That's cost him time, hasn't it? 6.1. It's gone back up by a couple of tenths of a second once again. So this is really touch and go. And that car is still in the way. That BMW is. There's no way that Juddy can find his way past there. That car's completely blocking his path. Finally, the BMW moves out the way. Now, I can't tell which one of the BMWs it is. I think it might be Brad Jones, is it? No. Is it Craig Lua?
Yeah, Craig Lua. It is Craig in the BMW. Of course, running the same paint scheme as Peter Davidson. And unfortunately, that was just a tricky point in the circuit to try and get out of the way. I don't think he was expecting Juddy to catch up as much as he did. But for Juddy, I don't think that cost him too dearly in the first sector. He did go wide, so it doesn't pick up on our feed on what first sector he set. But the gap stayed around about 6.0, 6.1, so it didn't cost him too much. But it also meant he wasn't really able to find any time.
No, and poor lap there from Ollie Parker, a 143.1. And that's going to lose. I think he's starting to slow up a little bit now. I think the tyres might be getting to him. Of course, he didn't pit for tyres, so maybe there's a little bit of a lack of pace because of that, because he's not been anywhere near his proper pace for the past 5 laps. Parker has been in the mid-42s to the low 43s. A 42.4 for Tim Bob. For Joe Juddy, what will that lap time be for him? Is he still 6 seconds back? And we didn't get to see, but I think, yeah, 42.0 it's come up on my screen. But I think that might be his last lap, so I'd imagine it's still in and around the low 42s.
Well, that gap is now 5.6 seconds, actually, between Tim Bob and Juddy. So I would imagine, actually, that could be a 41, that lap. That lap could be a 40 or 1 minute 41. Of course, it was invalidated, so we don't get the actual timing of it, but the fact he's gained around about a second now onto Tim Bob. Is Tim Bob starting to struggle? Is Juddy putting his foot down? Is he starting to get those tyres under control? But it is certainly decreasing that gap, and we could see a proper battle on our hands. It's 7 tenths in the favour of Tim Bob. Of course, it's not over if Juddy does get him. Of course, there is still the investigation. But how Juddy would love to take that 3rd place in the unofficial results and just recover what has been a very, very torrid evening for him after being 2nd place in the first 3 rounds. Anything but a podium will be extremely disappointing.
Certainly would be. And I think all of your top 5, because I think Stevens as well, they've all had very good races and they've all done remarkable things for their own rights. I mean, I know that Stevens and Juddy have made their mistakes, but they still had a good race. They're still fighting for some good points. Team Bob's had a worldie. So is Ollie Parker and then David Wrench. I mean, there's no words. He's the Max Verstappen 2023 version in here. He's just so quick, and nobody's got a chance of beating him. Lap time there for Bob was a 42.7, 42.1 for Joe Juddy. If that is worrying for Tim Bob. Let's have a look at the gap when it re-pops up for us. 5.1. 7 minutes to go. This is going to be touch and go, but I think Juddy might do it just about. It's going to be a couple of tenths in it, though, I think.
I think he will take it, because Tim Bob is starting to struggle. He was another one that didn't take tyres. And I think this is where we're starting to see those tyres come into effect. So that is why Juddy and Stevens took so long in the pit lane, was due to them taking tyres, and I think repairing some damage as well to boot, because that's why they've come out so far behind Ollie Parker. They were fixing their car and taking tyres, but this has really turned into a brilliant race for 3rd and 4th. It's more of a time attack than it is an actual race between the pair, but it's still going to be lap after lap, and Juddy has now broken that 5-second barrier. He will take that 3rd place as it stands. Still can't rule out that steward's inquiry. Of course, we have 6 minutes and 40 seconds to go. I believe we'll probably get about another 5 laps in this race, as David Wrench is, I believe, just making his way down that main straight. Actually, no, he's making his way into turn number 4. Making his way through the long right-hander, and something's happened to Edward Jones. Oh, he's had a big off, and I think he's lost both rear tyres.
I think it's both fronts, yeah, into the barriers. 2 tyres gone. That is race over for Edward Jones, who was coming home in 8th place, was never under any pressure from Bomber Brown and was nowhere near the back of Davidson. What a shame for Edward Jones. I mean, he's trying to move the car, but when you've only got 2 wheels, it's not really going to go anywhere. Big shame for Edward Jones. But back to the battle for 4th and 3rd. Joe Juddy, 4.7 seconds. He also set the purple final sector on the last lap. Out of nowhere, Juddy has come alive. And this is probably, since I'd say, we've done 48 laps, I'd say since maybe lap 41 or 42, this has been his best stint. He's been absolutely electric on pace, consistently in the low 142s.
Yeah, Juddy has been rapid in these final stages of the race. We're going to quickly see what happened to Edward Jones. Oh, and it looks like it may have been either a wheel disconnect or something went wrong there for Edward Jones. As down the straight, he went straight on into the wall. Unfortunate to see there for him, who was running a decent race, as Carl Fenton picks up another yellow flag. And this time it looks like it's on the exit of turn 3 this time around. So it's not the final sector. He's moved locations into the first sector. But for David Wrench at the front of the field, he's had a bit of an off lap on that last one. He's 26.2 seconds clear here, Nathan. He has been flying at the front of the field, especially once Juddy was off his case. He's just not looked back, and no one's been able to come anywhere near him.
No, he's been very good, as David Wrench, and I'm not surprised. I mean, considering he's won the first 3 races, yet again quite comfortably, and he's over 20 points ahead after 3 rounds. It's what you expect. I mean, we saw him over in the Armed Forces League over on ACC, and he was winning everything there. He was always 3, 4, 5 tenths a lap quicker than everybody. So, I mean, to see his name here once again, when I came into the night, I thought, oh, he'll win. And he certainly has done. Well, not yet, but I'd imagine he will do. I can't see him making a big mistake. I mean, I don't think I've even looked at him since like lap 2 or 3. He's been clear ever since, and he's going to get to the end quite comfortably. Now, this is where things get touch and go. Tom Stevens, 8.6% energy. 3 minutes and 45 seconds to go. This might be a potential blundering strategy for Tom Stevens. Has he played it a little bit too risky?
I think he might have done. I think he's tried to spend as little time in the pit lane as possible. We're going to bring up that energy graphic for you now, ladies and gentlemen. You can see it is now, of course, 7.8%. It says 8% on your graphic because it is rounded up to the nearest whole number. But it is... This is going to be very touch and go. So for Wrench, I think he could still get another 2 laps out of this. By the time he reaches the line, yeah, I think there's still another 2. There's still 3 more laps Stephen has to do. He's not going to make it. He's not going to make it at all.
Well, when I've seen him go in the pits and he had about like 10% less than everybody else. I mean, he's got 9% less battery energy than David Wrench. So I thought at that point he's played that risky because it's not like there's a few drivers doing the same thing. He's lower than everybody. I think there's only like 1 or 2 drivers who are on the near-ish when it comes to battery. 2 minutes and 30 to go. So there'll be this lap, and then there'll be another at least for Wrench. So Stevens is going to play this tight, and I think the same can go for Tim Bob. He's only got 8.6% himself. I mean, he might be fine. But maybe that's why he slowed down heavily to Juddy, because maybe he's got to be a little bit conscious of his energy that he's got left. I mean, saying that, Juddy's just at a 141.9, so he's got some good pace, but maybe Tim Bob's had to think a little bit about actually getting to the end of the race.
I think he might have done, as we're now going to see Tim Bob. We'll go on board with him. Let's listen into his throttle. Yeah, a little lift before braking. Oh, and he's gone deep into the chicane as well. That's not going to help him at all.
Wrench crossed the line with 1:45 to go.
Oh, he's just going to make it. He's going to make it. There's going to be 52 laps in this race. And we are currently on lap 50 if you are the name of Tom Stevens. And he's only got 4.7%. He's going to have to come into pit lane and at least top up another few percent and bring this one home. And it's not going to be a top 5 finish here for Tom Stevens. He made the strategic blunder. He hit the wall on pit lane entry as well when he came in for his what was meant to be his one and only scheduled stop, and he is not going to make it to the end unless David Wrench crawls to an end here on the final lap and kills the time. But I don't see David Wrench doing that.
Well, he's just on a 36.7, the fastest first sector than anybody in this lap. And Joe Judy again has just... Oh, Stevens is in. He's
Stevens
pitted.
is in.
That's it, yeah. Because there's no 0.7, the 100-second stop and go. Just pit and serve maybe, what, 30 seconds max? Get in, top up, get out. I mean, it's a silly mistake to make. I mean, the game literally gives you how much energy to put in, it tells you. So, he's gone against the game's instincts, and it's not worked well.
Not worked well at all. Tim Bob has made it work. He'll make it work.
It'll be P6 for him. He'll finish ahead of Bomber Brain, but... Yeah, I mean, it's another position for Tim Bob at least. And for Jennings and Davidson. Davidson's come home P6 somehow. He was like P11 earlier.
He certainly has. He was the first one to come into the pit lane and he's made it to the end of this one.
And Wrench has just crossed the line with 3 seconds to go.
That's the difference there. 3 seconds is the difference between Stevens making that strategy work and not. And yeah. David Wrench was not playing ball. He was not. No, you made that mistake. You made your bed. You lie in it. And for David Wrench, he starts the parade lap, the victory tour. And while you were going on about Tom Stevens there in the back and the energy, we actually had a really nice shot there of Carl Fenton spinning and Tim Bob going through the smoke. It was quite quite an aesthetic photo if someone was in photo mode for that one. And for David Wrench, he's coming through into the final sector in a few moments' time, but look how big that gap is to Ollie Parker. He's just making his way into turn 2.
Oh, Stevens, what's happened?
Oh,
he's made a mistake. Oh. He's just stopped still.
Yeah, he's just stopped here on the exit of... no, on the inside, I think, of the kink before the chicane. So for Tom Stevens...
Was he out?
Might have just pulled up to the side of the road and will be out, but at the front of the field, now coming through the penultimate corner, and will lead us slowly through that final corner. It's going to be an agonising long wait after the drive he has done, but after an hour and a half, after topping qualifying, nobody was able to stop this man once again. The streak will certainly continue here for David Wrench, and he is going to make it 4 wins out of 4 to start the season. He ends the first half of the season with a bang, and it's 4 wins in a row for David Wrench, who is reigned supreme here in Japan, and it is going to be the victory for David Wrench. Second place will go the way of Ollie Parker in a fantastic drive from the Porsche man. He's had to withstand some incredible pressure from cars behind, but he has not crumbled, and where they have faltered, he has picked up the pieces to take that second place, and a spectacular drive from him. And for third, it will be decided in the stewards room. But for Tim Bob, he's actually got 0.8% left with energy as he makes the run to the line. It's perfection on the strategy front. If it wasn't for that 5 seconds, it would be a fantastic third place result from the Lexus. But Joe Juddy will take this one on the road, but we'll wait for stewards' inquiries for who's to get third place. Tim Bob crosses the line in third. It'll be 4th place after the penalty. And for Robert Jennings, he's managed to pick up a 5th place out of this one. But for David Wrench here, Nathan, the unstoppable force reigns supreme once again. He takes the victory here in Fuji.
Certainly. Brilliant work from David Wrench. 25, what was it? 26 odd seconds at the end, that was. Insane work by Wrench. Ollie Parker, I think for me, he's driver of the day. You know, given that he had such a good pace from the beginning, he moved up a couple of spots in qualifying, and then he was consistently on good laps all the way to the end. So for me, there's no reason why I wouldn't put Parker as the driver of the day.
Yeah, certainly driver of the day there for Ollie Parker. Excuse me. But here are your results, your unofficial results here from Fuji. It's David Wrench, then Ollie Parker, followed by Joe Judy in third. Tim Bob, Robert Jennings, Peter Davidson, Bomber Brown, George Powsland, Tom Goad, and Craig Lua round out the top 10. And then we have Brad Jones, Carl Fenton, Stevens, Edward Jones, Murray, Dubé round out your DNFs. The rest of the drivers did not attend here tonight, but Ed, over to, for the first time this evening actually, mine and Nathan's wonderful. You all desperately want to see after a race like that. That was a very good race, Nathan, and I mean the top two, absolutely faultless.
Certainly was. But we do have an interview here. We've got in the pit box 2, or our commentary box, we've got David Wrench. Wrench, can you hear us? You're muted.
I can indeed. Hello.
There we go. I mean, I'll ask a question first, Max, and then you can go away with it. I mean, absolute dominant work today, Mr. David Wrench. Of course, you've won the first 3. You've now won all 4 races to start off the season. I mean, it's just Grand Slam after Grand Slam. I mean, I remember commentating over you over on on ACC. I mean, LMU, GT3 cars. I mean, it's your thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It was more of a haphazard thing, this championship. So I've never been a real big fan of LMU, and I say it consistently. I don't enjoy the feel of the game. It doesn't feel as nice as things like ACC or iRacing. But for some reason, I just jump in at the start of practice. It clicks, and we go from there.
Max?
Yeah, it certainly was, of course, just a great race from as well, and just overall, of course, Wrench. Of course, you've done ACC, you've done the iRacing stuff as well. Just how different in terms of games in terms of a game is LMU compared to the likes of iRacing and ACC, and how much do you enjoy it maybe more than the others?
LMU holds itself. It's difficult to say. I mean, it's definitely better than ACC. It feels a lot smoother. The cars feel roughly as, I mean, from somebody that sits in an armchair and watches GT3, they feel how they look on TV. But I'll always favour iRacing, especially when doing GT. AFVRC's always been my bag. But no, this game. It may look like a big victory today. It definitely wasn't, and it definitely normally isn't. Juddy, Pete Davidson, people like that do keep me humble. It's more just turning the screw slowly but surely.
Yeah, it certainly is indeed. And just talk us through, of course, the race as well. Of course, once Juddy had his mistakes, it was kind of you in a bit of no man's land at the front of the field. Just how difficult was that for you to keep yourself mentally focused on the race around you? Because you had no one to battle with. It was pretty much time trial lap after time trial lap.
As I said, I will say the first, I think it was 10-15 minutes with the Mustang in the rearview mirror was a lot easier, just because I know I'm managing a gap. Keeping that at 1.5 seconds so that Mustang can't sit in my toe and make a move into turn 1 was the goal. After that, it, as you saw probably from the lap times and the timing screen, it was fast lap, slow lap, fast lap, slow lap. It is difficult to manage at the front. I don't want to sound like I'm saying, oh, you know, it was a horrible race. It was really challenging. It wasn't. As I said, normally I've got Juddy to keep me humble or Pete to keep me humble. So yeah, it is difficult up front.
Yes, it certainly is. Situations like that. And of course, 4 wins out of 4. You started the first half of the campaign off well. We head to Portimao next time out. Are you confident around a circuit like that, or is it a bit of a challenging track for you?
Once again, the LMU isn't really my bag. Every race I've done this season has been my first proper race on these tracks, bar testing out a car in practice mode or doing an AI race at Le Mans because I wanted to do a 24-hour solo. Other than that, it is just first time out, hope for the best.
Well, it's seeming to work so far. So it's going to be interesting to see how you get on with the rest of your season. But yeah, congratulations on the race victory, and hopefully you make it 5 out of 5 next week. But I know the others will certainly really try and stop that.
Yes, thank you.
Well, David Wrench, ladies and gentlemen. But we do have the other 2 podium sitters now in the interview room as well. We'll start with Ollie Parker, of course, who finished in 2nd place. Ollie, how was that race for you? A brilliant 2nd place result for you. Just how did you find things?
Challenging, to say the least. I hate this track with a passion. I think it's the first race I've done that I've actually not span. So just trying to keep it clean and consistent more than anything.
Yeah, well, he certainly was able to keep it very clean and consistent compared to other drivers around you. We saw a massive gamble in the strategy as well. You came in earlier than both Judd and Stevens. Just was that always the plan? And did you take fresh tyres in that? Because you came out with such a huge gap to the others.
So I only took front left tyre. I planned to pit quite early anyway. As soon as I saw that Juddy spun, I knew that he had the pace to catch us back up, and was kind of hoping that them two would have some sort of a tussle and a bit of an argument. And yeah, it paid off. Paid off quite well.
It certainly did indeed. And again, I'll ask the same question which I ask, of course, David, because at that point you were just in a bit of no man's land, especially through that final sector. Just how difficult was it for you to stay focused and make sure you kept the car on the island and facing in the right direction?
Extremely. I mean, I didn't do any practice before the race, so it was just find a random setup and just whack it and see how it goes. Every lap with that setup, I was trying different things, trying different lines, different braking points. So the last sector is terrifying every single time because the back end just feels like it's slipping away from you. But yeah, it was all right, thankfully.
Certainly was all right indeed, and of course that is your best result of the season. You've got it at the halfway stage as well. Just how does that give you a confidence boost into the second half of the season, especially into Portimao?
Pretty good. I mean, it's only my second race here. I've literally only done Monza apart from that, so yeah, it's not bad. I know I've got the pace to be up there, but I wasn't expecting a podium. The top 5 is always the goal.
Well, the podium was certainly there for you, and you took it. So, congratulations, Ollie, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you back next time out in Portimao.
Yeah, thank you.
So there we have it. Great to speak to the top 2, and we have our final podium sitter, Mr. Joe Juddy. Joe, welcome in. I mean, given how that race went, I think if you risked everything into a list and said, "Oh, you're going to get third," I think you'd be quite happy with that, because that was a crazy race, wasn't it?
It was very intense. It's not what I wanted. I don't like Fuji. I haven't seen the incident yet, but I'm holding on to it going in my favour.
I mean, going into the race, of course, yet again, you and David right up at the top there in qualifying, but of course, a couple of laps in, a big mistake, which, you know, was a big turning point of your race at turn 15. I mean, explain to us what happened there. Was it the fact that you locked the rears, or what happened for you? Because it was a weird one from our view.
Yeah, so I noticed that the pace was I was starting to increase my pace, and I just got a bit greedy, put my foot to the floor and just lit the rears up, spun out, and then that was all she wrote.
I mean, and then of course you had a little bit of contact. I mean, was any of that leading to damage? I think you had 2 incidents where you had a contact with another car.
Yeah, so with Pete, I got front damage, and I carried on, and it was okay. But then it was my mistake on the second one with Tom. I just misjudged my braking and went into the back of him, and that led to me having quite a bit of damage. So I had to change just my front tyres just to like mitigate the time loss, and it didn't pay out.
Of course, and then pit stops came through. You came out about, I think at first it was about 12 seconds back to Tim in what was third at the time. I mean, what was your mentality at that moment? Because you had to bring down such a time gap, and then you saw that 5-second penalty come through, and then I think it was at least 5 or 6 laps, and you just couldn't quite break into that 5 seconds. Of course, in the end, it went comfortably. But I mean, in that moment, what was that pressure like? Surely it was just mounted upon you out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was definitely a bit hot-headed going into it, and then as soon as I saw the 5-second penalty, I set my goal and I wanted to pass him on the track, but I just made too many mistakes putting in my hot laps, and I wasn't able to piece it together, unfortunately. I was very upset.
Yeah, I can certainly imagine indeed. But anyway, still a podium for now at least. But of course, big congratulations on that result. And hopefully we'll see you next time out in Portimao. So Joe, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much.
There we go, Max. It's rare these days, isn't it, that we get to speak to the top 3 in a race. We don't get that often in our other leagues, do we? So I think we'll be quite happy with that.
No, we certainly don't. It's nice to hear from all the podium finishes, actually. But I mean, that was a great race, and of course for Wrench and Parker, they did it absolutely perfectly. Of course for Judd, he's going to have to wait a little bit longer to see if his podium is confirmed. But of course, looking forward in the season, the second half of the season kicks off next time out, as I mentioned, in Portimao. Then we've got Imola, Bahrain, and we end the season off with Le Mans. Of course, for Wrench, he's saying he's just taking it as it comes. He's doing some time trial beforehand, and it's seeming to work.
Yeah.
Circuit like Portimao, it's very difficult to master. Could
Yeah.
potentially see our first different winner.
I mean, we've got 4 very difficult tracks coming up. We've got Portimao, Imola, Bahrain, and Le Mans. I think if Wrench takes that mentality of, I don't like the game as much, so I'll turn up, do a little bit of practice, one of those tracks is going to catch him out, because Portimao, it's always been tricky. You've got a lot of undulation, you've got lots of heavy braking zones, and medium speed corners straight into braking zones, which of course can cause lockups. Imola, you've got a lot of chicanes, lots of places you can go off track, lots of curbs you can hit and go round. Bahrain, you've got very difficult braking zones again, turn 9 and 10, where you yet again go from high speed straight onto turning, then onto the brakes. And Le Mans, which is just notoriously a very difficult track. It's a long lap, you've got to focus all the time. I think if Wrench takes a strategy in, one of those tracks is going to fool him at some point, because they are not easy tracks. Looking at the first 4 races, we've had Silverstone, you know it like the back of your hand. Monza the same. Then round 3 went to Spa. I mean, those are 3 tracks every driver knows. You've had an easy start, and now it's the nitty-gritty stuff.
And of course, he says he likes playing ACC, iRacing as well. Silverstone, Monza, Spa, Fuji, the first 4 rounds, they're all very much predominant on calendars in the likes of ACC. So, Portimao, I think, is going to be the first big test here for Wrench.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the make or break for potentially the rest of his season, because, of course, Imola, that does feature on other games, but Bahrain, you don't really see that featured with GT3s often, and in games with GT3s. So there are some bogey tracks maybe there for Wrench, and if you are Judd or anybody else, that's where you need to capitalise.
Certainly, and I think that those drivers have proved it. I mean, Juddy and Parker, they've shown today they've got pace. I mean, Davidson, in other races in the past, he's been there as well. So it's one of those where I think today, Wrench has got lucky, others have made a mistake. Whereas next time out, it could be a different story. He makes a mistake, then he's the one that's got to fight back. And as good as he's been, I mean, he doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want to lose. He's won the first 4. Why would you want to then drop to second for the 5th race? Maybe he's got to put a little bit more into it.
Maybe he certainly does indeed. But he's got a week to find...
We've got some information.
Oh, breaking news, everybody. What is it, Nathan?
Car 12. That's a 5-second penalty in accordance with the rule 11.2 dive bombing. So that means Joe Juddy will lose that podium. Just come through to us last minute.
That has come through just before we head off. So Juddy loses the penalty. That means Jim Bob is on the podium.
Yeah.
We have Jim Bob.
I think he does. Yeah, just about within a second, he'll make it on.
Yep, he will take that place. Only just. That is ridiculously fine margins.
Yep.
But that does mean Juddy does lose out on that podium, ladies and gentlemen. You didn't have to wait long. You didn't have to wait till next week to find out. You got it just as we're about to head off. But Nathan, as a final note, is there any last words from you before we say goodbye?
Just a big thank you to everybody taking part and for having us and Driveline Media involved. I mean, I'll be here along with you, Max, for the rest of the season, I hope. So there's a lot of action still to unfold, so I can't wait.
There certainly is indeed. We head to Portimao next week, and will Wrench's streak continue? That's going to be the big question on everybody's minds. Will we have, finally, our first different winner of the season? Well, join us at 8 PM UK time, 9 PM European time for round 5 of the season. The second half of the campaign will begin. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you all very much for watching, and